Pirate's Most Powerful Villain, Chapter 481-500. Chapter 0481-4 Snow Saint. Love peace. For Shui Sheng's words, all the gods of death disdain. Dreams can be called peace-loving, and they will not occupy the mountains as kings. Relying on their own power, they forcefully occupy the empty towns of the present world, and they also say things like, the three worlds belong to each other. This style is lawless. Stop talking nonsense, fight. Yamamoto Yuanyujai snorted coldly. He didn't want to say more. Under such a situation, if the two big monsters were allowed to leave safely, it would be a devastating blow to the prestige of the Soul Society. Seeing this, the most impulsive one was Komamura Zojun. In the previous battle with the Lich King, he was not lightly injured, but at this moment he was still the first to do it. Bankai Black Rope God's Wrath. Boom boom boom. A huge black armored warrior stood upright from the cliff of the hill of Shuangsheng. It wielded a huge blade and slashed at Shui Sheng with one sword. The old man and your dreams are at odds with each other. Komamura Zojun roared loudly, and his anger caused him to explode with power beyond the past. Seeing this, Shui Sheng calmly stood in the void with his hands on his back. 15 around him, the wind and snow fluttered, and then, the power of the snow wind exploded, and hundreds of millions of six-flower crystals flocked to the black armored warrior frantically. This knife slashed down, but it was blocked by the manic wind and snow, as if a sword slashed into a thick quagmire, and the sword was trapped. I'm very impatient, Captain Kashiwamura. Snow Saint Vivi Isho said, with so many of your captains, it is difficult for even the Lich King to defeat you in a short time, let alone me. Why, do you want to make peace now? Dreaming. Yan, who gave you confidence? Shui Sheng looked at him lightly, let me unlock a layer of seal. Between words, he mobilized the mysterious power in his body. Previously absorbed the Zanpakudo of Yamamoto Yuanyujai and the main army Ikibe, and attacked the power of 10 phantom jades. This power is stored, and it was not completely stimulated until the moment of incarnation of the Snow Saint to improve the star rating. 3-star Snow Saint is upgraded to 4-star, and what he needs to consume is exactly the power of 10 magic jade. Boom! In an instant, the power of the wind and snow became more and more violent. This snow wind spread, and in an instant, it shrouded the entire wide area of the hill of Shuangshan. His power is increasing, Dongxian said in surprise. Just like Sea Dragon, can he strengthen himself when necessary? Sea Dragon used Sea Dragon God at the beginning, which is different from the current Ascension Star, but others seem to be in a similar situation. Square root. Stop him, Yamamoto Yuanyujai ordered in a deep voice. O and GT equals O. Hearing this, Maojawali Vivi sighed and immediately slapped it out. Broken Road 88 Flying Dragon strikes Thief Thunder Cannon. P. Chi-Chi's electric light flashed, and in an instant, it turned into a thick laser light speed, bombarding the Snow Saint in the sky. This thunder light pierced through the heavens and the earth, and its attack speed was as fast as lightning, and it came in a flash. Compared with Blizzard, Lay's power naturally has the problem of attribute restraint. Almost instantly, Shui Sheng's body turned into a pool of water vapor. It's too late. However, a chuckle suddenly sounded. Ujawali Vivi was startled, his eyes narrowed, isn't that the main body? The attack felt like hitting the entity, and it did work, but there was still a trace of disobedience. Upon hearing the laughter, Uno Hanalai immediately reacted. Probably similar to the existence of avatars. Sure enough, in the next second, on top of Feng Wang's head, an ice and snow holy lotus slowly unfolded, and then, within the holy lotus, the figure of Zhu Sheng condensed again. It's a pity, you also lost the last chance. Zhu Sheng raised his brows and looked at Ujawali. Your attack is indeed very strong. You deserve to be the first, Janba, but unfortunately you killed me. A clone. Differentiate himself, he can have as many as he wants. As long as his body is not destroyed, he will not die. At the same time, in Shui Sheng's mind, the information of the new transformation also changed. 18th change. Snow Saint Ice Snow Lotus Monster. Star Rating. Ability 1. Body of Ice and Snow. Ability 2. Snow Wind. Ability 3. Ice and Snow Holy Lotus. Ability 4. Deep Cold Frontier. The new ability is a domain-type move. But when Shui Sheng digested the new ability, Mao Jiwalai's eyes narrowed slightly. She is rarely played by others, but this time she made a desperate move, but failed. It's very difficult to deal with, she thought to herself. The main body should be the ice lotus that appeared earlier, but it only appeared for a moment, and I don't know where it was hidden. In other words, if you want to deal with him, you have to destroy his clone, and then attack Snow Lotus the moment it condenses a new clone. This kind of cheating ability is really a headache. Doppelganger fights, the main body is hidden in an absolutely safe place, and there is basically no solution to one-on-one. Ujawali thought with a headache, if possible, I really don't want to be an enemy of this kind of monster. How to say, in short, the opponent is very strong. I will come. Zaraki Kenpachi grinned and rushed out towards Shui Sheng. As long as he fights against a strong enemy, he is not afraid of death, as long as it is a strong enemy. At this moment, a loud shout came from behind the hill of Shuangsheng. Please get out of the way, Captain Zaragi. Bankai Baboon King Shiwaimaru finally arrived at the battlefield, and he chose Bankai for the first time. Its Zanpakuto suddenly became huge, and a giant, coiled like a snake, had an Orochi skull and sharp fangs. At the moment of completion, Asane Renji slashed with a knife. Instant, the Orochi skeleton roared and hit Shui Sheng directly. Another Bankai, really good. Although 637 is an immature Bankai, but you are also a target. Snow Saint Isho raised his eyes and looked at the many gods of death. Then, if the number of people is inferior, let's change the battlefield a little. Between the words, he regarded Renji Asanjing's attack and nothing. Instead he stretched out his right palm and said lightly. Cold Frontier. In an instant, with Shui Sheng as the center, the snow wind danced wildly and quickly expanded outwards. Its expansion was so fast that almost before the attack came, it had already enveloped the entire hill of Double Death. Then the frost and icy snow wind blew, and everyone was surprised to find that the world had changed. Underfoot is no longer the yellow mud, but the thick snow. The visual distance of the field of vision is less than 5 meters, and the gods of death cannot even see each other clearly. The temperature was as low as -100 degrees, and the cold wind was blowing to the bones. Just standing here, I could already feel the rapid passing of physical strength. Will turn into a statue. This is... Yamamoto Yuanyujai looked solemn. Welcome to the birthplace. This is the frigid frontier. Shui Sheng's voice seemed to come from all directions, and every snowflake seemed to be his clone. Within this border, in words that you can intuitively understand, my combat power can be increased 5 times. 5 times. Everyone was horrified. Chapter 0482_4-star power. In words that you can intuitively understand, here, my combat power can be increased 5 times. 5x is just an overview, just like Bankai versus Shikai, the improvement is not a star and a half. This is not to say that Shui Sheng's own strength has increased much, but this field, or warp space, is beneficial to him. The snow wind forms the domain, and the deep cold frontier directly pulls all the targets in the domain into this subspace. At this moment, in the bone-piercing cold wind, many gods of death felt the coldness, even the captains were struggling to resist the cold. It's bad. If we don't have to fight for a long time, we can freeze to death. Dongxian wanted to speak in a deep voice, but there were no figures around him, only a white snowstorm. Captain Ujawa, is there any way? Broken Bee shouted. The 4th Division is a medical unit, proficient in medical ghost ways, and should have the ability to keep warm. In this regard, Mao Zihua was silent for a while. She did not answer, not because she couldn't answer, but Shui Sheng, who was standing in front of her. Are you purposely separating me from the others? Of course, it's common sense to abolish the medics in the opponent's team first. Shui Sheng gently isho, in the wind and cold, looks extremely dusty and ethereal. His figure is looming, as if it exists a few meters in front of him, but it doesn't seem to exist. Ujawali couldn't figure out the other party's trace, so she could only judge by intuition. Her spiritual pressure perception method was almost ineffective because of the influence of the deep cold frontier. The god of death perceives other spiritual bodies, or life, through the spiritual network to judge, but here is too much wind and snow, everything is very chaotic, perception is useless, you can only rely on the eyes. Realizing that he was probably isolated, Ujawali suddenly sighed. I really don't want to use this trick if I can. As she spoke, she undid her 2 braids, and let her beautiful long black hair loose behind her head. I admit that you do have the special charm of a mature woman, but the lure of sex is useless to this saint. Shui Sheng praised, and his tone was somewhat mocking. Hearing this, Maujawali was stunned for a moment. Although she couldn't help isho, she said, I thought the big demons were all cruel people, but you don't seem to have much murderous aura or resentment. The person who is killed will have resentment towards the person who killed him. This kind of resentment, as Maujawali, the top god of death, can naturally be felt. In her senses, Zusheng is a fairy, not a monster. That's right, this saint is kind and doesn't usually kill people. Shui Sheng chuckled, however, your feeling is wrong. Is this the kind of murderous aura you want? As soon as the voice fell, Shui Sheng's eyes narrowed, and in an instant, his aura changed from a worldly fairy to a demon king and a big demon. That is a terrifying murderous aura. I don't know how many people have to be killed before we can get the resentment. Affected by this murderous aura, Maujawali couldn't help Vivi's discoloration. It seems that you Kai still can't see the surface, then I have no room for mercy. She closed her eyes and slowly drew out her unique Zanpakudo. Bankai everything. In an instant, a terrifying blood energy filled the air, as if the bones of countless people were born. Ujawali's Zanpakudo, and the place where it stood, quickly seeped blood, and the blood spread, turning the surrounding into a pool of blood. One after another bright red blood fell from the sky, as if the sky was bleeding. Shui Sheng looked at this scene in surprise and said, as expected of the first-generation Kenpachi, compared with the rest of the captain-level death gods, it is obviously 1 level stronger. No, more than 1 level. I'm afraid that 5 Nirvana Li can't beat 1 Maujawali. There is a huge gap in the strength of spiritual pressure alone. Both are at the captain level, and the difference in strength is also very obvious. Mao Zihualai is completely in the top 3 levels. And you have also reached the limit of the god of death, Shui Sheng said calmly with his hands still on his back. Yeah, a long time ago, 8,000 years. Or more. Uno Hana is disheveled, which is the opposite of the previous Yamato Nadeshiko-like female image, and there is a murderous aura all over her body. Of course, this alone is an enhanced version of Zakagi Kenpachi. What's more troublesome is that this woman has a very powerful medical ghost. Did you know, in addition to wielding Zanpakudo, our Shinigami also has a Kendo rating? Vivi Isho of Ujawali, showing a penetrating expression, the current captains, because there is no strong hostile force, most of them practice Bankai instead of Kendo. My Kendo, thousands of years ago, has reached peak 1 peak 10 dan. As soon as the voice fell, her figure suddenly disappeared. In the next second, he appeared on the side of Shui Sheng and slashed away with a sword. This sword is extremely tricky, it is almost a dead-end attack, and it is extremely ruthless. It is not an attack that prays for heavy damage to the enemy and cuts off an arm, but a killing technique that kills the enemy with a single shot. Seeing this, Shui Sheng raised his eyebrows, stretched out his hand and grabbed it, and suddenly the snowflakes flew and turned into a sword of white snow. Immediately afterwards, he swung his sword sideways. What a coincidence, I am also a swordsman. Shui Sheng blocked it with a blow, and while speaking, the snow-white sword in his hand immediately turned into a pool of blood after touching the opponent's blade, as if it had been melted. But Shui Sheng seemed to have anticipated this, and flicked his left hand. Immediately, a piece of 6 flower crystals condensed, turning into a snow-white silver needle that penetrated everything, and suddenly shot at Mao Zhawali. At the same time, behind Mao Zhawali, the wind and snow danced, and another snow saint condensed and formed. The blade in his hand was raised high and slashed down sharply. Ujawali Vivi was shocked. Can multiple clones exist at the same time? Being attacked back and forth, she decisively gave up the idea of killing the clone, and chose to flee to the other side. However, although her movements were fast, she could not escape the pursuit of the snowflakes in the sky. I saw that in the constantly blowing wind and snow, another snow saint rushed out, and its blade seemed to have been waiting for Mao Zhawali. Also, she was shocked, is this guy's clone unlimited? Thinking so, she turned around and swept her sword. Sword press. Spiritual power poured into the blade, and after it was cut out, it immediately turned into an invisible slash. Whoosh! In an instant, the snowy space in front of it was divided into 2 layers by a sword. From the incision, it was even possible to see that there was a mountain in the distance. As expected of a kendo master, the reaction speed is really superb. Shui Sheng praised and opened his mouth, but his body slowly flew into the sky. However, in the face of absolute power, pure swordsmanship is also powerless. You haven't understood the real horror of this cold frontier. During the speech, he raised his right hand high, and then slammed it down. Big avalanche. Chapter 0483_practice another 100 years. Big avalanche. Qinyang swung his palm down and pressed it lightly. In an instant, the entire deep frost frontier shook violently. In the snowstorm, there are several mountain peaks, and their peaks are currently undergoing avalanches. The snow in the vast soup is incalculable, and the avalanche formed by it seems to have countless white beasts charging as it rushes down the mountain. This is. Mao Zhawali's complexion was slightly condensed, and his demeanor was serious. This is to use the power of wind and snow in an entire space to suppress her. In terms of power, I am afraid that it is even higher than the destructive power of the top ghosts. In the face of this kind of power in the world, personal strength seems very small. Like 10,000 horses galloping, the swept avalanche, driven by the snow wind, drowned everything. Without hesitation, Ujawali jumped up immediately, trying to dodge from the air. However, at this moment, a phoenix sound came. I saw above the sky, a phoenix fluttering with 7 colored wings, swooping down. Holy fire! Golden flames ignited around King Feng, and the overwhelming phoenix fire turned into a huge fireball, rolling towards Mao Zhawali. Underneath is Shui Bang, and the sky is divine fire. Mao Zhawali clenched the blade in her hand, gritted her teeth, and still chose to face King Feng. Compared with the big avalanche, Ho-Oh is obviously a little easier to deal with. Heaven's favored man, the city wall built of 390 iron, dragons walk, lions roar, tigers howl, and wolves run. Cut off the heaven and the earth before it collapses, and the 81 way of binding is broken. After chanting the text quickly, a pure spiritual pressure wall was born in the space between Uno no Hanalai and Hu, blocking everything. Boom! The golden fireball that King Ho turned into, the moment it collided with the sky, a loud noise immediately erupted. Immediately afterwards, a crack appeared on the wall of the broken sky, and with a bang, it shattered like a crystal glass. What? Ujawali's eyes widened, his field of vision was filled with flames. Can't you stop the 81 bondage road that is fully chanted? That's enough power to defend against all the breaches below the 90th, but it couldn't stop King Ho's sacrifice. The next moment, Ho-Oh, who turned into a golden fireball, engulfed Ujikali and shot him down. The two fell to the ground together, and with a loud bang, a raging flame erupted into the sky, and then, the avalanche of the entire deep cold border drowned them together. He. Shui Sheng stood in the air, with his hands on his back, watching this scene calmly. Think I'll be one-on-one with you? Naive woman. He shook his head and muttered to himself. One-on-one, he has to clean up Ujawali. It's not impossible, but it will take a little time. 3fen_, but this time is enough for the rest of the gods of death to react, so they will make a quick decision and quickly solve the healer. I was thinking that in front of it, several figures flashed, and they were all the gods of death. Captain Mao Zihua, Broken Bee glared at Shui Sheng, despicable. Do you want to say that I wait more to bully the less? Shui Sheng calmly said, then you might as well line up one by one to fight Ben Sheng. Hearing this, Broken Bee was speechless. It's useless to talk. Yamamoto Yuanyujai snorted angrily, and immediately took off his upper body clothes, revealing his incomparably strong body. His mouth and back are covered with scars, which are left over from fighting against powerful enemies for countless years. The old man will come to meet you in person. The rest, go deal with that phoenix. Between the words, he has already crossed dozens or hundreds of meters in one step, directly approaching Shui Sheng, and at the same time punched out brazenly. One bone. Seeing this, Shui Sheng immediately lifted the wall to resist. Boom. After the sound of a fist colliding, a huge force repelled Shui Sheng, and his entire right arm suddenly turned into a pile of white snow and dissipated. The 4 skills of the god of death, slashing fists and walking away ghosts. This old man is not only a fiery, big monster. Yamamoto Yuanyujai sneered, his eyes unconcealed with murderous intent. He. Shui Sheng but Vivi Isho, with a thought, his right arm instantly recovered. I'm not good at hand-to-hand combat, so I won't give you a chance. I just tried your strength. As expected, if I want to fight you hand-to-hand, I have to have the body of a sea dragon. Fear of the Great Demon King can also be done, but Shui Sheng can't. His clone is wind and snow condensation. He doesn't have much close-to-hand combat ability. Arrogant. In this regard, Yamamoto Yuanyujai dismissed it, and when he moved, he approached again, but this time, he attacked with both fists. Double bones. Seeing this, Shui Sheng didn't move, didn't dodge, and didn't punch to meet him, but with a thought, he mobilized the endless wind and snow, forming a shield of snow wind on his body. Compared with the previous one, the 6 flower crystals contained in the Shifeng mobilized this time have risen by 1 level, both in quality and quantity. Condensed in front of him at this moment, immediately turned into a shield, and resisted the punch. Boom. After the dullness, an impact attempted to penetrate the Shifeng shield, but this force was quickly dissolved by Shifeng after breaking the surface. In an instant, the 6 flower crystals collapsed in the hundreds of millions. However, in the next moment, these tiny crystalline blades, invisible to the naked eye, were all restored. What a tough shield. Yamamoto Yuanyujai's complexion changed slightly, and then he saw that the entire snow wind shield split and turned into a fluid, which quickly enveloped him and wrapped it into a spherical shape. This kind of thing also wants to hurt the old man. How do you know if you don't try? Shui Sheng faintly Isho, stretched out his hand and clenched his fist violently. Snowstorm. Boom. Hundreds of billions of 6 flower crystals tightened in an instant, the entire snowball collapsed and shrunk, strangling Yamamoto Yuanyujai to the death. The snowstorm was raging, and Beiming was busy. The movement here immediately caught the attention of the people below. Hitsugaya Tushiro widened his eyes and shouted, "Captain!" As he said that, he ignored King Feng and immediately killed him here. You are a snow monster, then let me freeze you. In the roar, the ice dragon wings spread out on his back, and the blade in his hand pointed straight at Shui Sheng. Dragon, Xian, rack. Reckless. Zhu Sheng's expression was calm, and he slowly stretched out a palm, thinking that your ice and snow Zanpakuto can hurt me. Then you can experience it with your body, Shifeng. As soon as the voice fell, the wind whistled. Hundreds of millions of 6 flower crystal knives flew towards Hitsugaya Toshiro. The two collided in the air, and immediately set off a monstrous fog. The air of ice spreads out, as if to clean the space. Puff! Hitsugaya Toshiro vomited blood, and his whole body was cut by countless sharp blades, leaving incalculable wounds. Impossible. His eyes widened, and he fell straight to the ground. Your ability. I said, here, my combat power has increased by 5 times, compared with when I fought against Kuchiki Byakuya, it has risen by 1 level. Zusheng looked down at the other party, and said in a faint voice, you are indeed a genius, Hitsugaya Toshiro. But if you want to fight me on an equal basis, go back to practice for 100 years. Chapter 0484_Arrow of the Divine Bird. I am sorry, close black lens bracket. Go back to practice for another 1,000 years. Zusheng looked down at Hitsugaya Toshiro who fell, and said lightly. Hit by his snow wind head-on, Hitsugaya Toshiro's ice dragon wings were shattered by countless 6-flower crystals, and his body was left with countless small wounds, and many sharp blades entered his body, destroying his function. In the bloodshot, Hitsugaya Toshiro fell heavily into the snow. Boom! His figure sank into the thick snow, and for a while, it was difficult to move. Captain Hitsugaya. Komamura Zojun roared, and suddenly looked at Zusheng. However, at this moment, under the white snow, a golden flame suddenly burned, and after the sound of the phoenix roar, the shadow of a flaming phoenix suddenly lifted into the air. Several gods of death could see clearly immediately. Above the claws of King Feng, they were holding a Zanpakuto, and that was the all-out of Ujawali. Bastard! What did you do to Captain Unohana? Komamura Zojun was extremely angry. It's okay, don't worry, I won't kill anyone, I just let her pass out temporarily. Feng Wang fluttered his wings and set off colorful rainbows, which were extremely mysterious. I am a life master, and depriving others of their lives is not my style. Is the monster's words believable? Komamura Zojun closed his eyes, trying to sense the spiritual pressure aura of Ujawali, but the wind and snow were raging here, and the method of spiritual network exploration was ineffective. Komamura, Toxian said in a heavy tone. Don't relax, no matter what, deal with the enemy in front of you first. You have been consuming it since you fought against the Lich King before, recover first and let me deal with it. Him. With that said, he took a few steps forward and pulled out his Zanpakuto. Phoenix, I am the captain of the 9th Division, Toxian Yao. For justice, I will stop you with all my might. Prevent. This guy is still acting. Feng Wang's eyes were sharp, as if he was penetrating people's hearts. Dongxian wants to be Aizen's person. Aizen jumped out to betray. He still wants to act. Why? Could it be that Aizen is not going to take Dongxian away, or, for some reason, still needs Dongxian to stay in the soul world? Just thinking about it, I saw a surge of spiritual pressure bursting out of Dongxian Yao's body. Bankai, the final type of insect cleaning Yanmo cricket. Boom. The Reiatsu released by Zanpakuto quickly formed a black elliptical sphere, wrapping himself and Ho-Oh inside. This is a dark world. In the enchantment of Yanmo cricket, Ho-Wang has lost sight, hearing, smell, and even the perception of spiritual pressure. It's over. No matter how strong you are, after losing your perception, you will be lost and be at a loss. Toxian was about to walk in the air, approaching slowly, and after approaching King Ho, he slashed with a sharp sword. However, at this moment, a pair of wings of Ho Wang suddenly radiated brilliance, which was extremely dazzling. What? Dongxian was about to look shocked, but seeing that the other party did not dodge, he immediately cut his teeth. It's over, yokai, it's no use struggling, and of course you can't hear it now. This sword aimed at Phoenix's head and wanted to kill it with one sword. However, in the darkness, the invisible Ho-Oh, but at the same time as the blade struck, his head VV turned, and he was able to avoid a blow. In the hurricane, the golden fire is like a hunter, and it snaps away. Avoided. Dongxian wanted to look shocked, and when he saw the flames approaching, he immediately dodged back and opened up the distance. However, at such a distance that the blade can cut the opponent's head, no matter how fast his speed is, he can't completely avoid it. Immediately, a phoenix flame was glued to the corner of his clothes, and in an instant, the flame spread and burned his entire body. The flames burned the soul, and Dongxian was about to let out a shrill scream. Boring Bankai. S voice slowly sounded. This kind of Bankai blocks my vision, hearing, smell, and spiritual sense, but it doesn't make sense. In front of my phoenix feather, in front of predicting the future, all your actions are in front of me. I expected it. One of the powers of the phoenix feather is to predict the future. Of course, the 3-star Phoenix King's ability to predict the future is not strong, but seeing the flaws Dongxian wants, there is no problem. In addition, the phoenix feather is not only this kind of ability, it is a feather on the Phoenix King's body. A dead person can be resurrected under the power of the phoenix feather. Ah! Dongxian was about to scream in agony, and was rolled on the ground by the flames. Stop acting, Feng Wang said calmly. You pulled me into this space because you want to talk to me. Don't waste time, talk. Hearing this, Dongxian, who was rolling, was going to have a sudden meal, and then slowly stood up. The golden flames around him also quickly faded. If you can, I just wanted to kill you with my sword, but the dominion level is really strong. Dongxian wanted to remove Yanmo Cricket's visual and auditory shields, and said solemnly, Captain Eisen will leave the Soul Realm, but I will stay for the time being. What's with me? This is related to Wang Jian's news, and I will cooperate with you in the future. It is not convenient to say now, and there are still some mice in the jingling court. He whispered. Then what? I need your cooperation. You beat me and hurt me. I will gain trust. Really? Feng Wang thought about it for a while, and immediately agreed. He wanted to see how Eisen was going to play. Then, as you wish. King Ho let out a long cry, and the next moment, a sacred fire burst into the sky. The flames filled the entire Bankai space, and the huge energy continued to rise, eventually reaching a critical point. Boom! In midair, the huge black elliptical sphere burst with a bang, and the flames dyed half of the sky, illuminating the fog in the ice and snow desperation like the deep cold frontier. And in the big explosion, Dongxian wanted to be charred all over and fell towards the bottom. East Immortal, Komamura's left formation was flabbergasted, seeing his friend's tragic state, made him even more furious. Sorry, Komamura, I'm not a rival. Toxian was about to vomit blood, and with a bang, just, fell in front of Komamura Zojun. Komamura Zojun immediately stepped forward, helped him, and after investigating, he raised his head full of killing intent and looked at the phoenix in the sky. You goddamn monster, I'm going to kill you. I won't get rid of you if I don't kill you. Bankai Black Rope Scourge King Ning. Boom boom boom. A giant in black armor slowly stood up from the ice and snow. Seeing this, Feng Wang's eyes were calm. You've used it 3 times, and I'm tired of waiting. The arrow of the divine bird. Between the words, his wings flashed, and in an instant, his entire body turned into a golden arrow, flying across the sky at an absolute high speed that surpassed the speed of sound. Whoosh! In an instant, the black-armored warrior's chest was pierced by a blow. Puff! A large hole appeared in Komamura Zojun's chest, and his eyes widened. You! He opened his mouth, vomited blood, staggered 2 steps, and fell down with a thud. With a flash of golden light, Ho-Oh switched back from the divine bird state. He looked at the state of Komamura's left formation, and Vivi shook his head. That kind of big man is useless except for strength, and it is also connected to the body, a living target. Chapter-485-Phoenix Feather. Resolved Hitsugaya Toshiro, Komamura Zojun, Unahakali, Tosenyao, the rest of the Shinigami, and a few figures. The 2nd Division, Shibi, and the 6th Division, Kuchiki Byakuya, these 2 have long since lost their Zanpakuto, so let's put them aside for now. The Commander-in-Chief, Yamamoto Yuanyujai, was suppressed by Zhu Sheng, and there were only 5 enemies left for King Feng to face. They are Renji Asanjing, Kenpachi Zaraki, Nimayuri, and Jingle Chunshui and Yukitaki Shiruro. As for Aizen and Ichimaru Jin, they were not pulled into the deep cold frontier, and they are still in the hill of Shuangsheng. At this moment, Ho Wang escaped from the divine bird state, and his eyes locked on the remaining 5. There are only a few of you left. He said softly, there is no point in resisting. Hand over your Zanpakudo, lest you accidentally lose your life during the battle. Stop joking, bastard. A Sanjing Renji gritted his teeth, handing over weapons to the enemy. Do you want us to surrender? We are the gods of death. Saying that, he waved his blade, Baboon King Shiwaimaru. Roar. Orochi Skeleton let out a roar, his long body turned, and then suddenly approached Ho-Oh. You're inflated, Renji Asanjing. Who do you think your Bankai helped you build? Besides, it's just an immature Bankai. Ho Wang dismissed it, and with the huge body of Orochi's skeleton, trying to catch up with his speed was a fool's errand. Under the existing illusion, the only one who can compare the speed with him is the Archangel. Immediately, his wings shook, and his entire body turned into a swift golden arrow. With a swoosh, the arrow of the divine bird greeted the Baboon King Shiwaimaru. The two collided in the air, and almost instantly, Bankai of Asane Renji, starting from its head, was completely penetrated and collapsed. Boom boom boom. In the big explosion, the Orochi skeletons exploded into countless segments and fell to the ground one after another. What? Asanjing Renji's pupils shrank, and she looked in a trance. Not only him, but the rest of the captains changed their faces. What the hell is going on? Kuchiki Byakuya frowned and said inwardly, using the body into an arrow and shattering Bankai, even if it succeeds, it will suffer unimaginable damage, but it looks like it doesn't have anything at all. Injury. It's self-healing. Jingle Chunshui said solemnly. Similar to Shu's super speed regeneration, the moment you are injured, your body will automatically repair, and the speed is far higher than Shu's super speed regeneration. Among the people present, he was the only one who could barely see clearly. That phoenix, it's not that it won't be hurt, but the moment it's hurt, it will be repaired. It seems that one blow can't kill you. Shiro Yukitaki shook his head and said, seal him. It can only be done. Jingle Chunshui nodded with a wry smile. This is just a master, it is so difficult to deal with, and at the master level, in a dream, ghosts know how many there are. Just the ones who have already appeared. There are Sea Dragon, Lich King, Snow Saint, and Phoenix King, but this is definitely not all. Jingle Chunshui can be sure, there must be other existences that have not appeared. The enemy is far more powerful than imagined, but it is not invincible. Although the ruler is strong, it is still somewhat understandable. The real trouble is Emperor Qin. Even Team Zero was helpless and could do nothing. Hearing these words, King Ho suddenly approached here, and at the same time a voice came. Seal me, naive. Before the sound arrived, the figure arrived first. In the state of the supersonic divine bird, the spread of the sound simply couldn't catch up with his speed. A distance of several hundred meters, almost in less than a second, has been reached in an instant. We'll stop him. You're ready. Jingle Chunshui gave an order, and then flashed his swords, not good alone. In an instant, the two slashes turned into a spiral-like wind, heading towards King Ho. The two winds that swirled around each other avoided the impact of the divine bird and trapped it inside. But this kind of siege was broken in just an instant, and there was no way to delay it for half a second. 91 Binding Roads. 1,000-handed Jiaoshan eliminates cannons. At the critical moment, Shiro Yukitaki immediately hit the ghost road to block him. Whoosh whoosh. Dozens of light attacks were sent out in an instant, and one after another light bombs covered the area in front of everyone. At the same time as the completion of the ghost path, Shiro Yukitaki quickly chanted, "The journey of 1,000 hands, the noble hand that cannot touch the darkness, the archer of the sky that cannot be reflected, the path of brilliant sprinkles, fan the wind of seeds, gather together don't be confused, just follow my instructions, the light bullet, the 8 bodies, the 9 articles, the scripture, the treasure, the big wheel, the gray turret, leave the bow to the distance, and dissipate brightly. Along with his chant, the light bullet that attacked Ho-Oh immediately doubled its power. Boom boom boom. The explosion in the sky blocked all sight, and the smoke was thick. Cough, cough, cough. Shiro Yukitake coughed again and again, spitting up blood. Floating bamboo. Jinglekin's face changed slightly. Don't be too reluctant. Don't worry about me, I'm here. Yukitake Shuru raised his hand, but his eyes were fixed on the front. Sure enough, in the smoke and dust, the golden flame suddenly soared, instantly dyeing the sky into golden color. The next moment, the shadow of a flying bird flew high into the sky. Sick seedling, there are 2 times, at the cost of shortening your lifespan, forcibly use the ghost way beyond your own limit, you can only delay for a few seconds. Ho Wong flapped his wings and set off one rainbow after another. Forget it, since your will to resist is so strong, I'm not interested in playing with you either. I will solve you all at once. Between the words, he immediately flew towards a higher place and flew directly to the heads of the gods of death. In an instant, countless wings radiated colorful brilliance, and a huge rainbow appeared above Ho-Oh. Sunny day. Swish. The sky was bright, as if a blazing sun appeared in this deep cold frontier. What does he want to do? Asanjing Renji had a bad premonition. Prepare to join forces to resist. Jingle Chunchui said solemnly. This is an energy wave stronger than just now. Phoenix feather. Feng Wang let out a loud cry, and all of a sudden, various futures appeared on top of his colorful wings, in the shining brilliance. The future scene changes, and finally turns into a freeze-frame picture. In that picture, it was the scene of his 4.1 death gods being defeated. This is your future. As soon as the voice fell, all of a sudden, a colorful light was projected down, as if the long rainbow bridge above his head directly suppressed a plate. Thick colorful light, falling from the sky. The 81 boundaries, breaking the space. Shuru Yukitake made another move, however, this time, the wall of breaking the sky, which he abandoned and sang about, was directly erased under the colorful light. It couldn't stop it for even half an instant, and the next moment, the colorful light devoured everyone and directly knocked everyone to the ground. Boom. Seeing this, Ho-Oh kept his wings outstretched and stared down calmly. The wings on his body have dimmed a lot, and the power consumed by a single blow is huge for him, who is only 3-star. But its power is equally terrifying. This is a future blow. How can something like the void be useful? Chapter 0486-10 Zanpakudo. 7 rainbow lights fell from the sky, easily shattering Shiruro Yukitake's broken sky, and knocking the remaining 5 gods of death to the ground in one go. It was like a rainbow bridge that suddenly descended, suppressing many gods of death. This is Ho-Oh's special attack. By predicting the future, the power of the phoenix feathers is maximized. However, after all, it is 3-star, and it is unrealistic to deal with 5 captains at once, and it is unrealistic to kill the opponent, but it can plunder the Zanpakudo in the hands of others. I saw the rainbow light fall to the ground and hit the snow, causing a big explosion. With a loud bang, the flying snow was set off, and in the flying snow, this piece of rainbow light flew back with a swoosh, and it also carried 5 Zanpakudo. The 5 Zanpakudo were wrapped around the rainbow light and flew to the top of Feng Wang's head, as if they were stuck and could not break free. After a long time, the flying snow dissipated, and the 5 people who were attacked showed their bodies one after another. Asanjing Renji was the most miserable, and passed out directly in the snow. 15. Jingle Chunchui and Yukitake Shuru suffered the biggest attack, but they were slightly better, but they were also half kneeling on the ground, looking haggard. As for Zengi Kenpachi and Niyuri, these 2 are slightly better, but they consume a lot of spiritual energy. At this moment, they are all pale and gasping for breath. The attack just now. Niyuli narrowed his eyes and coughed again and again. Cough cough. Fortunately, I avoided part of it in the end and hit the front. I'm afraid it will end like this guy. He glanced at Asanjing Renji, and couldn't help but feel terrified. That kind of attack, as if it were a rule, Ho decided the future and made it a reality. Duan Kong was not smashed at all, but was directly ignored, as if Zihongguang had penetrated the wall of Duan Kong. As he was speaking, Shuru Yukitaki, who was struggling to support him, suddenly became a monk, vomited blood, and his face was as pale as a paper guarantee. He swayed and fell directly into the snow. Floating bamboo. Jingle Chunchui was startled and wanted to help, but his situation was not much better. Damn! Zaraki Kenpachi staggered to his feet, looked up at the phoenix flying in the sky, and said, "I've never heard of such an attack. There are so many moves you haven't heard of." Feng Wang looked calm, fluttered his wings, and set off rainbows. "I've been merciful, can't you think you can stand? This is flickering." In fact, he has already cast spells with all his strength, which consumes a lot. In order to capture Bankai. Zaraki Kenpachi grinned, "What a pity, my Zanpakuto, even Shikai can't. He is the only one who can't know Bankai, not only Bankai, even Shikai." Hearing this, King Feng raised his eyebrows and nodded, "What I said is, I'll give it back to you." As soon as the voice fell, in the huge rainbow directly behind him, the Zanpakuto belonging to Kenpachi Zaraki immediately flew out and projected towards the master. At the same time, there are 4 rainbow lights. These 4 rainbow lights shot at Hitsugaya Toshiro, Komamura Zojin, Unahakaru, and Tosenyao, who had been unconscious. After projecting it, it quickly reflected back and brought back 4 Zanpakuto. Counting the original 4 handles, there are 8 handles. In addition to this, there are already smashed B's and Byakuya Kuchiki's Zanpakuto, which are 10 in total. 10 Zanpakuto. King Ho nodded in satisfaction. At the same time, in another place, Shui Sheng is still suppressing Yamamoto Yuanyujai. Yamamoto Yuanyujai was forced to carry it down after a heavy snowstorm from him earlier, but he was dragged by him and could not support Jingle Chunchui. At this moment, seeing his own defeat, Yamamoto Yuanyujai couldn't help but be shocked and angry. As expected, each of the Dominion level is so difficult to deal with, whether it was a sea dragon in the past, or a phoenix now, with strange moves and powerful combat power, so many captain levels, they can't even beat them. Of course, there are also reasons for the excessive consumption before, but no matter how you look at it, the dominant cadres on the dream side are already stronger than imagined. Damn you monster! The veins on his forehead burst out, ready to fight to the death, first to deal with the snow saint in front of him. But Shui Sheng, who saw his mind, flew away and quickly got out of the opponent's attack range. I waited for the task to be completed, and now I think about fighting hard. Yamamoto Yuanyujai, don't you think it's too late? Shui Sheng put his hands on his back and chuckled. Besides, how much stamina do you think you still have to fight with me? Even if you beat me, so what? Let me tell you a desperate message. What? Yamamoto Yuanyujai frowned. Any member of my dream can ignore the spatial distance and directly summon other cadres. This cadre refers to the master class. Shui Sheng said lightly, that is to say, if I want, I can immediately summon all the dreamers, Sea Dragon, Archangel, Lich King, etc., and even Lord Qin Emperor, can tear apart the space and travel through the space in an instant. 2. What are you trying so hard? What are you trying to do? Hearing this, Yamamoto Yuanyujai felt sad and angry. If this is true, then, as Shui Sheng said, the Soul Realm has no power to fight to the death. A master class can at least deal with 4 captains, and even defeat them. Even if he loses the Zanpakuto, it is difficult to deal with the master cadres, let alone defeat the opponent. And Emperor Qin, that was the existence of the Zero team that easily defeated, probably surpassed the super combat power of this dimension of the God of Death. Yamamoto Yuanyujai did not blame Team Zero for escaping. Their duty was always to protect the Spirit Palace, but the 13th team of Gote was defeated with little resistance in the face of the dream attack, which made him feel heavy. How to face such a powerful enemy? He. Shui Sheng laughed twice, and immediately waved his hand, and the space changed. The snow on the deep frost frontier faded, and everyone returned to the hill of Shuangsheng once again. This time, it's just a warning, a lesson, and deprivation of Bankai. If next time, your 13th guarding team does not need to exist anymore, Lord Qin Emperor will personally go to the Lingwang Palace to behead your Lingwang. Snow Saint turned around. Let's go, King Ho. Immediately, King Ho screamed and flew to the top of Snow Sage's head, and Snow Sage jumped to Ho King's back. Just as he was about to evacuate, Shui Sheng was suddenly startled. He lowered his eyes and looked below the Hill of Two Deaths, where a corpse lay quietly. Yi of Saifeng Yuan. He raised his eyebrows and said inwardly, judging from the wound, it was killed by one blow. Was it made by Aizen? The purpose of Saifeng Yuan Yi's visit to the Soul World is to recapture the Bengyu, which is in the hands of Lan Ran. Thinking like this, it is easy to come to a conclusion. Not dead, just dying. I can feel the faint soul fluctuations, and if I leave it alone, it will definitely die. No, she won't die either. The Guardian Team 13 will definitely save her. I'll save her. When Feng Wang thought about it, a rainbow light suddenly appeared. The rainbow light was projected on Saifeng Yuan Yi, revitalizing her soul. Resurrection of the Dead. Chapter 0487-I stand above the law. Resurrection of the Dead. The rainbow light shone on Saifeng Yuan Yi's body, quickly recovering his physical strength and repairing his wounded soul. The phoenix is a legendary beast, and the first ability it possesses is to revive the deceased. Even the dead can be resurrected, let alone just dying. The rainbow light shone down, but within 3 or 5 seconds, Saifeng Yuan Yi, who was in a coma, trembled and woke up. Her vision was blurry. Under the wrapping of the colorful rainbow, she could barely see above the sky, a big bird burning with golden flames, flapping its colorful wings, and on the back of this divine bird, stood a man in white. Huh. Her consciousness gradually became clearer, and she quickly recalled what happened before her coma. She sensed Aizen's breath and chased to the hill of Shuangsheng, but found that the golden flames she saw in the distance had disappeared, and only Aizen and Ichimaru Jin were standing in front of the Shuangshengtai. She went up to make a sneak attack, but was blocked by Ichimaru Jin. After that, Aizen fought against her in person. Aizen. Saifeng Yuan Yi was completely awake, got up abruptly, and looked around. Seeing this, her complexion suddenly changed, and her pupils were even more horrified. On the platform of the hill of Shuangsheng, there are scattered gods of death lying on the ground. Wujawali, Yukataki Shirokuro, Jingle Chunchui, Hitsugaya Toshiro and so on. Only the commander-in-chief could still stand there, but his body was covered in blood and wounds continued. What? Saifeng Yuan murmured in shock, is this all done by Aizen? No, it's me. Suddenly, a voice came from above the sky. Saifeng Yuan Yi suddenly raised his head, Shui Sheng. You little female cat is a good pet, running around, if we hadn't rescued you, you would be dead. Snow Saint Vivi Isho said, however, what you want to do is up to you, and I will wait for you to save you. You saved me. Saifeng Yuan glanced at Feng Wang at Zhu Sheng's feet at night, and the power of the rainbow light was incredible. It seemed to be the source of life, nourishing her soul in an instant. Feng Wang nodded and said, I don't need your verbal thanks, I just want to ask you a question. Excuse me. Saifeng Yuan nodded slightly at night. Where is Aizen? See. He should have left. After I was defeated, they left. Maybe in the break perhaps the boundary has been passed. Really, I see. Ho Wang nodded and immediately flapped his wings, taking Snow Saint with him, and disappeared in an instant. Watching the two leave in a daze, Saifeng Yuan Yi's mood is complicated. These monsters do things according to their own preferences. They don't ask for anything in return for saving her. The little black cat that fainted is generally not worth mentioning. Now Bengyu falls into Aizen's hands, and the 13th team of the Guardians of the Soul Society is almost wiped out. Who else can stop it? Siphon Yuan thought with an incomparable headache at night. At the same time, break the boundaries. Like the intestines of some kind of animal, Aizen and Ichimaru Jin walked back and forth in the dark tunnel. Captain Aizen, aren't you curious about the outcome of the battle over there? Ichimaru Jin said with a smile. Silver, there is a limit to one's curiosity, and I've never had the slightest interest in the kind of battle whose outcome is doomed from the start. Hearing this, Ichimaru Jin smiled without saying a word, but in the depths of his heart, the figure of a certain person appeared, and there was a slight worry. At this moment, an orange-yellow light suddenly flashed in front of him. It was like a train in the steam age, driving in a foggy day, with a huge momentum. Of course, in the broken world, there is no steam locomotive. It is a strange creature, like a huge worm. It's you two. Ichimaru Jin's smile stopped, and his expression was solemn, the scavenger who broke the world. Sutu, a scavenger that appears every 7 days within the boundary, does not rely on spiritual pressure to survive, and when it appears, it will destroy and devour all substances that block its orbit. It is not so much a living thing as it is a law in the broken world, just like the universal gravitation of the planets in this world. Seeing this, Aizen stopped and said softly, there is no way for the corpse and soul world to take Kutu. Any god of death who passes through the broken world must be careful not to be targeted by Kutu. However, the so-called law. As he said that, he raised his hand slightly, preparing to use the power of Bengyu to eliminate Kutu in one go. However, at this moment, in the space in front of it, just as Jutu was about to collide, an arm suddenly stretched out from the void. The next moment, the arm swiped, as if torn the space, and then a figure walked out slowly. The so-called laws are just constraints for ordinary people. We stand above the laws. Qin Yang's posture drifted, and he intercepted the two of Aizen directly in the boundary. Aizen Suoyusuk, you want to say that, don't you? Between the words, the Hutu behind him, like a high-speed train, suddenly slammed into Qin Yang's back. Ichimaru Jin's complexion changed slightly, and his pupils contracted. Originally thought it was the scene where Kutu devoured this person, but the result shocked him. That rampage, as a rule, as a scavenger's squat, suddenly shattered and collapsed at the moment when it collided with the person in front of him. It was like a piece of ice cream that was thrown into the furnace and melted into water in an instant. Kutu did not turn into water, but its existence was wiped out in an instant. Disappeared. Aizen's heart trembled. If it was just to destroy Jutu, he could accept it, and he could do it reluctantly, but erasing it and making its existence disappear completely is unbelievable. This is like, who can erase the gravitational force of the earth? In the same way, in the realm of breaking, restraint is universal gravitation. It is the law, but the law, when it collides with the person in front of you, the law bows its head and collapses. What are you surprised about? Qin Yang's face was calm and his figure was ethereal. This is just my projection. Qin Yang said calmly. Emperor Qin. A drop of cold sweat appeared on Lan Ran's forehead. What are you looking for? What is it? You need to directly tear the space and intercept him within the boundary. Nothing. Qin Yang glanced at him, then looked at Shimaru Yin, and then said, of course I know the situation between you and the virtual circle. Whether you go to the virtual circle or the world, it's up to you. But the seat is empty. Cho, if you step in without permission, don't blame me for being disrespectful. Between the words, he stretched out a finger and pointed it out. Under this finger, a black jade ball was born and quickly bounced towards Aizen. Seeking Daoyu. Seeing this, Aizen's complexion changed greatly, a life and death crisis enveloped his heart. What is this? Chapter-481-King Qin of the Qin dynasty. What is this? Aizen Soyuk was shocked. The black ball that flew out from Qin Yang's fingertips seemed to be the root of all things, including the power of everything, and the energy intensity contained in it was extremely terrifying. He didn't dare to touch it at will, and at the moment when the small ball flew, it immediately faded back, and in an instant, it opened a distance of dozens of meters. The black ball was castrated unabated, it seemed to lock on Aizen, and it still shot at a rapid rate. Ichimaru Jin Vivi turned sideways, avoiding the black ball, and then looked at Aizen. He could also feel the terror of the black ball, so he was a little curious about how Aizen would respond. I saw Aizen kept retreating and said at the same time, crossing the river and demolishing the bridge. Emperor Qin. Between the words, he had already opened a distance of 70 or 80 meters. Seeing that the ball was about to catch up, he immediately stretched out his hand and swung it. Anti-film bandit. Ichimaru Jin was stunned. The so-called anti-membrane bandit is a 277-dimensional small square, which can be used to seal objects. Those with weak spiritual pressure will be forever exiled in a different dimension. Hours long. I saw this small black square. When it approached Chu Daoyu, it instantly expanded and turned into a black square different space that slowly turned. This different space devoured the Taoist jade, as if it wanted to annihilate the power of the 5 elements of yin and yang. However, before Aizen could breathe a sigh of relief, the black space that swallowed the Gudao jade suddenly looked like a sea sand castle, and it collapsed at a touch. Chu Daoyu did not pause, and after breaking through the anti-film bandit, he approached Aizen in the blink of an eye. What? Aizen Vivi's eyes widened, and her body froze for a moment. However, the black ball stopped quickly when it was about to touch his chest. Crossing the river and demolishing the bridge. Qin Yang looked calm, stretched out his hand, and Jiyu Daoyu flew back again. Just to warn you, lest you be too inflated, the Bengyu is not what you got, but I don't want it. As he said that, he turned around, waved his hand, and suddenly tore apart the space. This is not the ability of the Shadow Demon, but the time and space shuttle of the Time Fish. Step in. Qin Yang gave Vivi another pause and said sideways, Aizen Suoyusuk, the world is much bigger than you think. What you can see is just a piece of the ocean. A grain of sand. You are just sitting at the bottom of the well. When you can climb to the top of the well, come back to me. Goodbye. The voice fades, and the figure disappears quietly. QV. 1. Subsequently, the torn space healed quickly. There were a few cold sweats on Aizen's forehead. In the moment just now, the black ball seemed to have the power to obliterate him. Captain Aizen, Ichimaru Jin said. I'm fine, Silver. Aizen let out a light breath and relaxed Vivi's tense body. I am so sorry, I made you see a little gaffe. This person is really strong and terrifying beyond common sense. Although he did not dare to claim to be invincible, at least he had reached the limit of the god of death. It's like some kind of exam. The full score is 100 points. He has already reached 100 points, and he can't take a higher score. However, Emperor Qin scored 200 points, 300 points, and 500 points, which was totally unreasonable. Come on, Silver. Aizen said in a low voice. You can't go to Kakuza town, we can go outside Kakuza town. First of all, we need to fuse the 2 collapsing jade. For this, we need some experiments. Yes, Captain Aizen. Jin Isho was still thinking about the trick in his heart. He found that Aizen was not invincible, at least the black ball just now had the power to threaten Aizen's life. Saraiti, near the first team's quarters. The leader of the Zero Division, the head of the army, Ibe, fell to the ground, and beside him was the King of Knights. At the foot of the King of Knights, is a broken arm. All the members of Team Zero, their bones are constructed by the power of the Spirit King, and the so-called Wangjian refers to these, body bones. The Night King looked at the broken arm and couldn't help shaking his head. However, an arm is just an incomplete King Key, and it is useless. There are 2 general ways to enter the Lingwang Palace. First, enter with the members of Team Zero. Second, rely on the will of Team Zero and others to enter. In addition, it is to create Wangjian, and break into it by himself, gate of opening. Maybe there is a 4th method. The King of Knights chuckled and said inwardly, tear the space and walk in directly. Just as he was thinking about it, Aikibe, the main soldier of the army, who was lying in a pool of blood, moved his fingers and Vivi opened his eyes. "You're awake," said the knight. "You saved me." The soldier's head guard, a soldier, looked at his own condition. His broken arm was bandaged, and the wounds on his body also showed signs of being healed. "Where's Emperor Qin?" he asked. "Who knows, that person came and went without a trace." The King of Knights picked up the broken arm under his feet and gave it to a soldier in the main army. "Also, I don't know how many times I said it, don't call it directly. That person's name, that guy will sense it." After receiving his severed arm, the head guard of the army suddenly sighed. "It's too strong, how could someone be so strong? King of Knights, I know you. You are the legendary King of Great Britain, so I doubted before. By the way, is Emperor Qin the King of Qin of the Qin dynasty in ancient China? King Qin, the imagination is so rich." The King of Knights slandered in his heart, and it was not the Holy Grail War, so where did the King of Qin come from? However, if the other party wants to think so, he doesn't care. Maybe. Anyway, thank you for saving me. The soldier's head guard, a soldier, said solemnly, "How is the situation in Saranje now?" "It's all gone." King of Knights shook his head and said, "With just 2 dominators, your Guardian 13 will be wiped out." "What?" A soldier in the main army was surprised. "No surprise, it's Shui Sheng and Feng Wang who did it." Of course, in terms of frontal combat power, the 13th team of the Guardian is still superior. However, before the Lich King consumed the physical strength of the captains, and the Qin Emperor abolished the Bankai of Yamamoto Yuanyujai, not to mention Shattered-bi and Kuchiki Byakuya, who lost their Zanpakuto early in the morning, so this result is not accident. It's really bad. Aikibe frowned deeply. It seems that the combat power of the Gotei 13 must be strengthened. One more unfortunate news. Isho, the King of Knights, said, "Aizen and Ichimaru Jin, who betrayed the Soul Society and joined forces with the Dream, have now escaped." Hearing this, a soldier in the head of the army was stunned, and then anger flashed between his brows. Dream invasion, he is not so angry, but it is a shame to have a traitor within the God of Death. "So, here I have a proposal." King of Knights grinned and said, "You guys are currently vacant for the captain's seat. In a short period of time, I'm afraid you won't be able to find a new captain." "Why not? How about I be the captain?" Chapter 0489_Captain's Assessment. Why didn't I come to be this tilde how about captain? The current Gotei 13 teams, all captains, have already lost their Zanpakuto. It can be said that there are very few people who can Bankai. And he is one of them. Hearing this, Aikibe, the head of the army, couldn't help being stunned. "You don't know where you came from. No, now is an extraordinary period. The enemy of the enemy is a friend. Since you and the Dream are in a hostile relationship, you want to become the captain is not bad either." He did not know the strength of the King of Knights. But Bankai of the King of Knights, he knows that his title is Monk of the Eye, and what he creates is a name, and he knows the real name of all the Zanpakuto in the soul world. The King of Knights Bankai, 12 Knights of the Round Table, he knew about the King of Knights before he succeeded in his cultivation. Of course, only the name is known. Your Bankai is very strong. It's not a pure ghost-type Zanpakuto. You haven't fully developed it yet, and you have a lot of potential. The head of the army, a soldier, nodded and said, "However, if you want to become the captain, you have to see what Yamamoto Yuanyujai means." Saying that, he grabbed his severed arm, got up and said, "I have to go back to the King's Spirit Palace first, and then our 0 division will go down again. Before that, you should inform Yamamoto Yuanyujai and tell him not to provoke him for the time being." Dreamy. No problem. The King of Knights watched the other party leave, and Washo immediately. There are 3 ways to become a captain. First, pass the captain's exam under the witness of 3 or more captains, including the captain-in-chief. Second, to be recommended by more than 6 captains and endorsed by 3 other captains. Third, in the witness of more than 200 players, the current captain was cut off. Under the current circumstances, the third method is definitely not advisable, and he still belongs to the role of unknown origin, so he cut a captain and replaced it with this method, although simple, but it is easy to cause dissatisfaction. In addition, the second type is unrealistic for the King of Knights, requiring almost the approval of 9 captains, which is too troublesome. The most suitable one is the first one, passing the captain's exam. The captain's exam. Except for Zaragi Kenpachi, almost all captains have passed the exam. Thinking of this, the King of Knights shook his head, then I will also try the captain's exam. A few days later. After a devastating catastrophe, the Soul Society was left in shambles. All the captains suffered serious injuries, but fortunately, they were not fatal. After a period of training, most of them could recover. What's really bad is the Zanpakuto, including Yamamoto Yuanyujai, all the captains, Zanpakuto have been taken away. It can be said that the current Saranjay is unprecedentedly weak. The headquarters of the Gote 13th team, the captains' meeting. Unlike the usual meeting of 13 captains, this time, there were only 11 captains, but in addition to the captain, there were 2 outsiders, the King of Knights and Saifeng Yuanyaiki. Yamamoto Yuanyujai said, "The defeat this time is because the enemy exceeded expectations. We can accept it, but Aizen's betrayal is our shame." Saying that, he looked at Saifeng Yuanyai and said, "Little girl from Saifeng Yuan, what do you want to say now?" Hearing this, Saifeng Yuan shook his head at night and said, "It's too late. As I said before, we entered the corpse and soul world not to lead the dream, but to prevent Aizen from obtaining the Benyu dollar. Now that I say this, it's already too late. About Benyu, about the 2 Aizens, all this is no longer a secret. It's us who misunderstood you. But it's a fact that you invaded Saraiti. You have Kazuki Urahara behind you. Go back and tell him that this time we won't hold you accountable because the enemy is now." Yamamoto Yuanyujai snorted heavily, "Let's go." Pedantic. Saifeng Yuanyi was very dissatisfied, and she also thought that Soul Realm could join forces with them to stop Aizen. However, there are 2 Aizen, and Urahara Kazuki must be told about this first. Thinking of this, Saifeng Yuanyi was too lazy to say more, and left the conference room directly. The King of Knights watched everything, stood quietly in the center, and said nothing. At this time, Yamamoto Yuanyujai said, "Do you want to be the captain?" "Yes, there are 2 vacancies for the 13th team of the Guardian, isn't it?" The King of Knights grinned. "You guys don't have any candidates for the time being, but we have the same goal, both to deal with fantasy." The 2 vacant positions were the captain of the 5th Division and the 3rd Division, namely Aizen and Ichimaru Jin. "In special times, I can ignore your identity and origin." Yamamoto Yuanyujai closed his eyes, pondered for a moment, and said, "You want to be the captain, no problem, 3 ways, which one do you choose?" "The first one, the captain's test." The King of Knights answered without hesitation. Hearing this, Hitsugaya Tushiro whispered, "Pass the captain's exam under the witness of the 3 captains including the chief captain. Count me in, I can be a witness." "The third one, I'll be the witness." Shuru Yukataki coughed and said, "At present, new combat power is indeed needed. Arthur has mastered Bankai, and in a very short period of time, he is the god of death. The potential is huge." Quote. "Yes." Yamamoto Yuanyujai nodded and said, "The captain's exam, the exam is Zonquan Walking Ghost, you have passed the Zon. The other 3, you need to study at the True Central Spiritual Arts Academy. When do you think you can take the exam?" "You can start anytime." Quote. "No need, you can do it now." Vivi Isho, the King of Knights, said, "That kind of thing, just read it once." Hearing this, Yamamoto Yuanyujai frowned, and after a while, he said, "Since you said so, the captain's exam will be held tomorrow." The specific content. Please wait a moment. What else do you have to say? The King of Knights pondered for a while and said, "Actually, I have a companion. He is the same as me, and he is from outside Japan. His strength is far greater than mine. Since you have 2 vacancies for captains, you might as well let me contact him and let him participate in the assessment together." Quote. What? Everyone Vivi was shocked. They still knew how much of the strength of the King of Knights. He definitely had the level of captain, and the other companion was far more powerful than the King of Knights. Who is he? Yamamoto Yuanyujai's eyes flashed, and he asked in a deep voice. At present, Seo Lingting is in urgent need of strong combat power. Even the King of Knights can agree to the other party to participate in the assessment, and it is not impossible to have a so-called companion. In order to deal with the terrifyingly powerful fantasy monster, this was also forced to be helpless. This, the King of Knights, Vivi Isho, stretched out his hand and waved, and immediately, a golden Reiatsu drew an image of a person in the air. Seeing this, Jingle Chunchui's eyes narrowed, and his heart was full of surprise. What a precise spiritual pressure control ability. Then, he saw the person in the portrait clearly. His name is Gilgamesh, the King of Heroes. Chapter 0490_Invisible Empire in the Shadows. His name is Gilgamesh, King of Heroes. King of Heroes, Gilgamesh. Hearing this name, Yamamoto Yuanyujai's expression changed. Jingle Chunchui even blurted out, "Impossible. This is a myth and legend." Arthur, the King of Knights, is still a historical figure that can barely be verified, but Gilgamesh, the legendary King of Heroes, is not even a human being, but a demigod. How could such a character exist? What? Broken Bee couldn't help but ask, who is Gilgamesh? Leader of the band Jing, you seem to know something. I know. Jingle Chunchui stared deeply at the King of Knights, and said in a deep voice, after learning about the existence of the hero King Arthur, I checked a lot of information, including information about Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, the oldest known epic poem in the world, Epic of Gilgamesh, the ruler of ancient Mesopotamia, the city-state of the Sumerian dynasty, the legendary king of Uruk. Around 3500 BC, the earliest city-state civilization was born in Sumer in the lower reaches of the Mesopotamia, and the representative city was Uruk. Gilgamesh is the king of Uruk. 3500 BC. Broken Bee's eyes widened and said incredulously, is that a person from 5500 years ago? How is that possible? It's not like that. Jingle Chunchui opened his mouth and wanted to correct the number 5500, but it didn't seem necessary, it was all myths and legends anyway. According to legend, Gilgamesh has a divine personality, almost equivalent to a godlike existence. Night King, tell me, your companion is Gilgamesh. Are you surprised? King of Knights chuckled and said, if I tell you again, the conquering king, Alexander, the tyrant, Nero, the king of kings, Ramses II, the Lion-Heart King, Charles I, and so on, it's all there, what do you think? Of course, it does exist, but not in this world. Jingle Chunchui didn't know, and was stunned for a while. Could it be that outside of Japan, there are many such existences as the King of Knights? At this time, Yamamoto Yuanyujai raised his hand and stopped everyone from asking. Who is your partner? This can be put aside for now, you say he is very strong. Yes, very strong, much stronger than me. The King of Knights estimated that, with his current combat power that is about to break through the 4-star level, plus Benkai's 12 Knights of the Round Table, and the Sword of Oath of Victory, I am afraid that he will not be able to defeat the King of Heroes. How is it compared to Emperor Qin? Yamamoto Yuanyujai asked. No comparison. Hearing this, the King of Knights shook his head and said, the Qin Emperor you have seen is only iceberg's corner of his strength. No matter how strong the King of Heroes is, he is not the opponent of Emperor Qin, let alone a King of Heroes, even if all the people I just mentioned are all of them. Together, they are not the opponents of Emperor Qin. Quote. Pause, he continued, your understanding of Emperor Qin is superficial. Is the Dominator level strong enough? One Dominator, your 4 or 5 captains may not be able to fight, but 10 Dominator levels, in Emperor Qin's hands, it may not last 10 minutes. Hearing this, many captains fell into silence. They have not seen the power of Emperor Qin, but from these words, it can be heard that its existence has surpassed common sense. Only Yamamoto Yuanlujai, with a gloomy face, did not speak for a long time. He had faced it himself, so he could barely understand what it meant. I see. After a while, Yamamoto Yuanlujai spoke in a deep voice. You can contact the King of Heroes, but you have to pass the captain's assessment. Compared with you, his origins are even more incredible, and he cannot participate in the captain's assessment for the time being. No problem. The King of Knights said indifferently. Then, your assessment will be placed at noon tomorrow. Disband. At the same time as the captain's meeting, in a corner of Saraiti, the two walked in the shadow of the building. It is close to the center of Saranje, surrounded by tall white buildings, just like the high-rise buildings in the world. Captain Aizen, we searched around Saraiti for 3 days. Lukiora finally couldn't help but ask, what are you looking for? Entrance. Genshin Aizen said softly, in the shadows that can be seen everywhere in Saranje, there is an organization, or it can be called, Empire. What? Lukiora froze. It's okay if you don't understand, you'll see it soon. Nianthan Aizen walks in the shadows, his eyes are searching, it seems that in the shadows, there is something inconceivable. After the chaos of 3 days ago, he has been hiding his traces and has traveled almost all over the Saraiti. I found it. Suddenly, he stopped and said with a smile, there are special spiritual fluctuations here. Huh. Lukiora Vivi frowned and followed his gaze, but could only see a shadow. You don't mind, this is not an entrance, there is no such thing as a door. Wanshan Lanyan said, the invisible empire only exists in a spiritual space, and this space is hidden in the shadows. Saying that, he drew out the Zanpakuto and swung it out. In an instant, the space was cut, a crack appeared in the shadow, and within the crack, a huge palace of ice could be seen. Come on, go to the invisible empire and meet there, Your Majesty. Putting away the blade, Wanshi Aizen stepped into it. Seeing this, Lukiora did not hesitate and immediately followed. For him, Aizen-sama's order is absolute, he just needs to follow it. And after the two stepped in, this crack was quickly annihilated, because Aizen was hiding the spiritual pressure, so no one could detect the god of death. At the same time as the two entered, in the Palace of Ice, many people felt the breath of death and emptiness for the first time. What? Somebody's in. It's the breath of the god of death. This Reiatsu is at captain level. Boom. In this shocking conversation, a huge spiritual pressure shrouded the entire ice palace in an instant. 5.2 breaths. In an instant, almost everyone in the invisible empire sensed the invaders. At the same time, in a dark, empty room, at the end of the invisible staircase, a sleeping man, Vivi opened one eye. Password. Yes, Your Majesty. There are guests, I am still sleeping, before the time comes, you go to, receive. The man in the black robe had a hoarse voice. He didn't speak at all, but his will was directly projected into the mind of a blonde man. He doesn't have a future, he's unthinkable. After leaving another sentence, the black-robed man fell silent again, as if he had never woken up. In another palace, the blonde man slowly got up and said humanely to the person beside him. Follow me to welcome the imperial guests. Chapter 0491_Let Yohabak speak out. I fell asleep yesterday and slept until 7 o'clock the next day. I quickly got up and started typing. Sure enough, I got used to the rhythm of the third watch, and suddenly it was very difficult to think of the sixth watch. My brain couldn't stand it. First today it must be the sixth watch. If it is not the sixth watch, I will eat shit. Close black lens bracket. The spiritual subspace where the invisible empire is located has a gray sky. Beneath the sky is an imposing ice palace. When Aizen and the two invaded from the crack in the sky, dozens of quenchers in white robes poured out from the palace. This is a Quincy. Lukiora followed behind Genshin Aizen, and when she saw this scene, she couldn't help saying in surprise. You also know the Quincy Master. The phantom body blue died in the void, dressed in the palace dress of the virtual knight, and looked at the riot below with a smile. Know one thing, Quincy is the mortal enemy of Shu. Ulquiorra said softly, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked at the Quincy masters gushing out of the palace, each of them exuding the breath of a strong man, a rather tricky feeling. For Shu, the Zanpakuto of the Shinigami is, slaying the industry but not the soul. After being killed by the Shinigami, it is only purified, and the soul will go to hell or be transcended. But being killed by the Quincy Master is directly obliterated, and even the soul will dissipate. A group of bereaved dogs, hiding in the shadows, shivering. The phantom body blue died Vivi Isho, took one step, and the figure came to the gate of the ice palace in an instant. Seeing this, Ulquiorra immediately followed. Seeing the two intruders, the many Quincy masters who appeared changed their expressions one after another. Grim Reaper, broken face. Impossible, how did these two invade? Can the spiritual space constructed by His Majesty be torn apart so easily? That's Aizen, captain of the 5th Division. A death god captain walking with a broken face, which shocked many Quincy masters. Among them, the vast majority are not aware of what has happened in the outside world recently. He. Huan Shen Lan Ran chuckled and said, spiritual space. The so-called different space, no matter how tightly constructed it is, its essence is that spirits build a wall. As long as the spiritual pressure is strong to a certain extent, brute force can open it. This is universal, no matter what kind of different dimension. As long as it is composed of spiritual suns, it can be blasted away with spiritual pressure, provided that the spiritual pressure is strong enough. Hearing this, among the many Quincy masters, one of the short-haired women couldn't help swallowing saliva. Use spiritual pressure to forcibly tear apart the spiritual space constructed by His Majesty, you bastard. At this moment, a middle-aged man wearing a blindfold snorted coldly and raised his hand to fire an arrow. What nonsense! The invaders must be eliminated. The holy arrow. Whoosh whoosh. In an instant, 12 spiritual arrows shot out suddenly, directly aiming at the key points of Wanshan Aizen. In this regard, Aizen completely ignored it, did not mean to resist, and seemed to have no interest in raising his hand. Do you want to deal with Aizen-sama even with such a weak attack? Ulquiorra's figure flashed, and he stopped directly in front of Lan Ran's body. At the same time, with a wave of his right hand, he instantly smashed the 12 sacred arrows. Quichen, you are so rude. Ulquiorra spoke indifferently, and his colleague Zhou Sheng burst out with a heavy spiritual pressure. Like rain, it can almost be turned into a real spiritual pressure, instantly shrouding everyone's heads. At this moment, the Quincy masters all changed. You are a 10-blade level broken face. Damn, how did you find this place? Get out of the way, I'll deal with him bloody outfit. The battle is about to break out, and at this moment, in the Palace of Ice, several people stepped forward. The leader has long blonde hair, blue eyes, handsome facial features, indifferent eyes, and is in his 20s, wearing a snow-white quencher suit. With his arrival, the numerous Quincy masters present pushed away and made way. Aizen Soyusuk, the visitor said with an indifferent expression, no, should I call you Aizen? Who are you? Genshin Aizen's tone was calm, let Yohabak come out and talk to me, if he doesn't want his star-crossed knights to be wiped out. Hearing this, the man's pupils Vivi shrank. It seems that you know a lot. He changed his posture slightly and said, I am Yu Grand Hasward, the highest rank of the Star-Crossed Knights. Aizen Soyusuk, you broke into our realm, what's the matter? Hearing this, the phantom body blue died, his eyes slightly condensed, and a faint blue membrane of spiritual pressure appeared in his pupils. Super Spirit Pressure Wall. Boom. In an instant, a huge spiritual pressure that was as heavy as a mountain covered the entire alien space in an instant. The earth, the sky, and even the space itself are shaking violently. What? Many Quincy masters looked horrified. What a huge spiritual pressure this is. Is this bastard still a god of death? Someone immediately knelt down halfway and supported the ground with one hand to prevent themselves from falling. Don't ask me to say it a third time, young Quincy, ask Yohabok to talk to me, don't you understand? Amidst the shaking of the world, Aizen spoke again, her tone as usual. This time, Hasward did not speak for a while. Soul Realm, Saraiti. In a training venue in a compound, the King of Knights stood in the center of the venue with his eyes closed, adjusting his reiatsu. Outside the arena, Hitsugaya Toshiro hugged his chest and said, "Tomorrow is the assessment. The content is Zanquan and walking away. You are fine with Zanpakuto. As for the other three, I will tell you about it now. Boxing, that is, white fight, fighting with bare hands. Walk, it is a snap step, a high moving pace. Ghost, which means ghost way, is a high-level spell that can only be used by the god of death. Speaking of which, a blonde woman with big breasts and a sexy wavy body suddenly spoke up beside Hitsugaya. Arthur, the speed at which you master Benkai is indeed unbelievable, but this can be attributed to your own reiatsu. Powerful, but ghosts, vain fights, and shunko are not powerful spiritual pressures that can be easily mastered. Quote. Vice Captain Matsumoto, you underestimate me too. Vivi, the King of Knights, opened his eyes pondering, I'll take a look at your death god stuff. Really? Matsumoto Ranju rolled his eyes and said, let's put aside Shida and Shunpo. Ghost, as a captain, you have to use number 90 or above in the assessment. And you must be singing a complete song. Under the premise, to achieve full power, there are special testing tools. Quote. He. Hearing this, the King of Knights couldn't help laughing, and at the same time murmured in his mouth. The 99th of the path, the 5 dragons are destroyed. Roar. The huge spiritual pressure rose into the sky, instantly transformed into the shape of a dragon, roaring, and slammed towards Matsumoto Ranju. What? Matsumoto Ranju's body stiffened, his pupils contracted, and the whole person fell into a sluggishness. Facing the flying Reiatsu dragon, he seemed to have completely forgotten to dodge. Impossible. It turned out to be number 99 who gave up singing. Chapter 0492 _ the 99th of the destruction, the 5 dragons destroyed. Ghost Road, divided into 1 to 100. At the general captain level, you can achieve ghosts below number 60. On the premise of giving up singing, it is guaranteed that the power will not be weakened. The senior captain level can do away with singing and use the number 80 ghost way, such as Kuchiki Byakuya, etc. And a top leader like Aizen can only use ghosts of number 90 and above, and give up singing. 90 is a watershed, and ghosts below and above number 90 are 2 levels, with a huge difference in power. However, what the King of Knights is using at the moment is Ghost Road number 99. Even if it is a big ghost leader, he may not be able to fully stimulate it without giving up singing. No, this is not the complete power of 5 dragons destroyed. Hitsugaya Toshiro was equally astonished, but he remained sensible. It's just to use the Reiatsu to summon a dragon, its power is only 1/5. The chanting spell of this move is extremely long. Generally, if you want to fight the enemy, you almost need to use abandon chanting. Of course Hitsugaya Toshiro could, but he couldn't use it, because he couldn't even summon a dragon if he gave up singing. In contrast, it is incredible that the King of Knights can complete the number 99 Ghost Road. Roar. The Reiatsu dragon roared and rushed towards the sluggish Matsumoto Ranju, and at the moment when it fell from the sky and was about to devour the opponent, it disappeared. Only then did Matsumoto Ranju's stiff body suddenly relax, and he sat down on the ground, gasping for breath. In a short time, she was already sweating profusely. Ha, if he hadn't stopped in the end, I'm afraid I would have been swallowed by the huge spiritual pressure in an instant. In the violent panting, Matsumoto Ranju's heart was extremely chaotic. Suddenly walking between life and death, she dared not underestimate the King of Knights any longer. Seeing this, the King of Knights seemed to be doing nothing and chuckled lightly. What are you so afraid of? The 5 dragons with 1/5 of their power are just turned to extinction. I saw it in the Great Spirit Book corridor, and I learned it by the way. By the way. This is a super difficult ghost way. Even among the captains, no more than 3 people can use this trick. Matsumoto Ranju slowly calmed down and said, with this ghostly knowledge, it should be no problem to pass the captain's assessment should. At this time, Hitsugaya Toshiro spoke and said, Zan, Ghost, you are all right, Shunbu and Shirai, I will teach you now. With that, he put down the Zanpakuto and walked towards the King of Knights with his bare hands. Waida and Shunbu, you don't need to train very deeply, but you must master the basics. Tomorrow is the assessment, so, no nonsense, direct actual combat. Seeing this, the Night King nodded and removed the heavy armor from his body. Come on, be you. In fact, he can do both Shirataki and Shunpo. Although he can't say how good he is, he has absolutely no problem with the captain's exam. Still, it's time to pretend. In the shadow of Saraiti, outside the Palace of Ice. The huge spiritual pressure of the phantom body blue dye continued to cover this space, but all Quincy masters who were in this piece of spiritual pressure could only feel the vibration of the heaven and the earth, as if the space could not bear it, and it was about to collapse. Can't you come out? After a long time, Ifani Aizen took a step out, passed Hasward in an instant, and appeared on the doorsteps of the Ice Palace. Then don't blame me, the star-crossed knights that you have worked so hard to cultivate will be buried today. What? Hasward's pupils shrank, staring ahead in disbelief. He was sure that he was not distracted, and kept Aizen locked on, guarding against any actions by the other party. But for a moment, he couldn't see the trajectory of the movement at all, not even the afterimage. It's not Shunbu. It's not a slap in the face, it's the flying feet of our Quincy. He was shocked, and suddenly turned his head. It's similar to a space jump, dissolving his body into light, reunite at target location photons move. The power beyond common sense is obviously not the scope of Death God's ability. This guy has broken the limit of the God of Death and reached a higher dimension. Hasward opened his mouth, only to feel a chill all over his body. Death, he is not afraid at all, even if it is Yamamoto Yuanyujai, he dares to fight, but the other Aizen in front of him, this mysterious person, seems to confirm what His Majesty said before, the unknown future, the existence that cannot be pondered. A person who can't even see through His Majesty's abilities. At this moment, Genshin Aizen pointed the 2 fingers of his right hand to the sky. Aren't you coming out yet? Then I'll shovel your palace together. The 99 of the breaking path, the 5 dragons are destroyed. Boom. The spiritual pressure was rampant, and the huge spiritual pressure shrouded in this space suddenly contracted like a swamp, and turned into 5 gigantic spiritual pressure dragons on top of Aizen's head. It is completely different from the 5 dragons destroyed by the King of Knights. This is the number 99 break with full power. With full force, one strike can destroy the power of Saraiti. At this moment, the 5 dragons gathered in the sky above the Ice Palace, roaring and falling towards the palace. Roar. In the roar, the momentum is magnificent, and even the space cannot withstand this huge spiritual pressure. Interesting man. However, at this moment, above the palace, a middle-aged man in a cape suddenly appeared. I had to open my eyes in advance, I couldn't see the future, I had to pay the price. Another Aizen Soyusuke, your existence is enough to make me curious. The hoarse voice sounded, and it was transmitted directly to the ears of the fantasy body blue dye. At the same time, facing the arrival of the 5 dragons, the black-robed Manbibi raised his head and whispered. The Great Holy Bow. Suddenly, a huge amount of spiritual power was gathered, forming a huge spiritual bow in midair, and 5 sturdy arrows were carried, and then suddenly flew out. 5 arrows and 5 dragons, 2 extremely powerful forces collided, and in an instant, a storm spread across the entire spiritual space. Boom. The storm caused by the pure spirits raged, and immediately several Quincy masters couldn't bear it, and were directly involved and strangled. Even Ulquiorra had to retreat a certain distance quickly to avoid being affected by the powerful aftermath. What a terrifying destructive power! He secretly said in his heart. Someone can actually play against Aizen-sama Yuhabak. He didn't know who Yuhabak was, but he seemed to have heard of it somewhere. Hurry up! Haswald shouted loudly, and immediately, many Quincy masters fled. The ability of the two collided, and their spiritual pressure had even penetrated into this spiritual subspace, and the overflowing energy could be sensed in the slightest inserange. In an instant, many captains changed their expressions and walked out of the room to explore the source of the change. At the same time, Aizen put his hands in his pockets, his face full of leeway. All the storms, when they touched 1 meter of his body, were divided by some kind of force, and could not hurt him in the slightest. As expected of the ancestor of the Quincy master, even if he has not fully recovered, his strength should not be underestimated. Phantom Blue Ran chuckled softly and said, I was surprised that I was right. Yuhabak looked as usual. Vivi narrowed his eyes, and in his pupils, it seemed to reflect the future. Unexpectedly, you have merged with Bengyu and broke the limit of death. Who are you? Chapter 0493_Yuhabak. Who are you? Yuhabak stared at Genshin Aizen. His strength has not fully recovered, and he even paid a certain price for opening his eyes in advance. But all this, compared with the power displayed by the person in front of him, is not important. Who am I? Nianthan Aizen's posture is abundant, and he calmly looks at the other party. Han, scan. Scanning is over. Found mysterious power. Number 6, orientation. In his mind, the voice of Fantasy Jean kept ringing. After listening to the narration, Nianthan Aizen immediately understood. The 6 mysterious powers refer to nothing but the spiritual bows in the hands of these Quincy masters. There were dozens of Quincy masters, but there were only 6 people holding spiritual bows. The results of the Fantasy Gene scan pointed directly to the things in the hands of these 6 people. Reaper's Zanpakudo, Quincy's spiritual bow. It's really the result of echoing logic. Wanshin Aizen secretly said in his heart. However, it is also expected. Seeing that he remained silent, Yuhabak spoke again and said, aren't you going to answer? You worked so hard to come here just to level my 227 palace. A strong man like you will not be so boring. Quote. He. Huan Shenlan Ran chuckled and said, indeed, I do have something to do with you. Why don't you use your all-knowing and omnipotent to see what it is? Yuhabak, the king of the Quincy, was defeated by Yamamoto Yuanyujai 1,000 years ago. After being sealed, he hid in the shadow of Seranjay and spent countless years building this space. His most powerful ability is all-knowing and omnipotent, knowing the future, seeing through the future, and changing the future. Hearing this, Yuhabak did nothing but stood on the top of the palace. You have no future. You are chaos, and there is a force within you that is obscuring the future. This power comes from the phantom god Qin Emperor. Any power that can see the past and see through the future cannot see through the Qin Emperor no matter how far away. Illusory Lanyan, as an illusory body of Qin Emperor, naturally enjoys the same power. Hearing this, Aizen laughed immediately. Relying on the power of omniscient and almighty, did the power fail? It's really pitiful. It's not that you can't see through it, it's just that you can't cultivate at home. After a pause, he said again, I'm here to find you. Nothing major, just a little protection fee. Protection fee. Rao Yuhabak thought of countless possibilities, but he didn't guess it. I'm very interested in your Quincy's spiritual bow. Wanshan Lanyan said, well, if you hand in 5 spiritual bows every month, I don't have to shoot you, at the same time. Nor will your presence be revealed. The information about your invisible empire must be very interesting to the Soul Society. Hearing this, Yuhabak was speechless. A Quincy master outside the palace couldn't help but said angrily, what a joke. Protection fee. Your Majesty, please allow me, Yaskin Nakroval, to take action against him. Shut up. Yuhabok's eyes swept away, and in an instant, Askin felt like a small boat in the sea. In a storm, it would sink at any time. His soul was shaken, his face was horrified, and he knelt directly to the ground, daring to say no more. He, how did you think about it? Wancham Lanran chuckled twice. Actually, you don't need to do this. I want to kill him in an instant. But until you give an answer, I won't take action. You're not Aizen Sosuke, but your essence is the same, which is really curious. Yuhabok looked indifferent. Since you were interested in the spirit bow, yes, you will give it to you. Between the words, he waved his hand, and immediately, the spiritual bows in the hands of the 5 Quincy exterminators flew out in unison and flew towards Aizen. Ulquiorra immediately dodged and took the 5 spiritual bows. Really decisive. Wancham Lanran shook his head regretfully. Then I'll let you go. Remember to go to the virtual circle every month and hand in 5 spiritual bows. If you don't hand them in, that day will be the day your invisible empire will perish. With that he turned away. Let's go, Ulquiorra. Yes, Captain Aizen. Oh right. Suddenly, Mianthan Aizen paused again, turned his head, and said Isho, I've heard, the Psalm of the Holy Emperor, too. The sealed king of the Quincy recovered his heartbeat after 900 years, and after 900 years it took 10 years to regain consciousness, and 9 years to regain power, and only 9 days to take back the world. There is probably the second half of this hymn. He, Yuhabok, you ask for more blessings. As soon as the voice fell, the space was torn apart, and Aizen and Ulquiorra entered the crack and disappeared. With the departure of the two, the faces of many Quincy masters turned gloomy. Being called at the door and humiliatingly agreeing to pay the protection fee made everyone angry. The same is true for Yuhabok, especially when he heard the praise of the Holy Emperor. His face was already gloomy. Suddenly, a piece of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and the whole person suddenly suffered 3 points. Your Majesty, Husward looked surprised, and secretly said in his heart, is it because the 5 dragons just disappeared? To use the great sacred bow, to deal with the destruction of the 5 dragons. Under that kind of spiritual pressure, Yuhabok just insisted and did not show it. I'm going to fall asleep. Yuhabok's voice sounded directly in the opponent's mind. Be careful of this person, don't be an enemy of him until I wake up completely. If he wants a spiritual bow, give it to him. As he said that, his figure faded and disappeared quickly. Your Majesty. Haswald was dazed. Can't you even speak? That one move, 5 dragons, turned out to be so powerful. He was afraid that Yohaba had forcibly endured most of the damage in order to protect the palace, but as soon as Aizen left, he couldn't hold it any longer. Aizen Sosuke. In Sarange, in the shadow of the building, 2 figures flashed one after another. Captain Aizen, that guy is obviously injured, why don't you take a breath? As soon as Ulquiorra appeared, he immediately noticed the strangeness around him. Imaginary body blue dye swept his eyes, and immediately said, don't hide, show yourself generously. As soon as he finished speaking, there were more than a dozen figures surrounding the 2 of them. There are 10 captains and vice-captains each, and even the King of Knights is among them. Yamamoto Yuanyujai stepped forward with a sharp expression, you are another Aizen. Old man Yamamoto. Aizen Vivi raised her head and looked at the sky. Unfortunately, you found out too late. The time has come. Boom. Above the sky, a crack was torn open by several large white bone hands, and it was a big void. The next moment, an orange-yellow light was projected down, covering the phantom god Aizen and Ulquiorra. Anti-film. Yamamoto Yuanyujai was stunned, and then stopped Hitsugaya Toshiro who wanted to do it. Enough. That is the power of Daxu to save his family, isolate the internal and external space, and it is too late to stop it. You gods of death, we will meet again. Aizen couldn't help Isho, stepped on the ground and slowly flew up. We'll meet soon, and until then, you guys just deal with the other me. Chapter 0494-Spirit King's Will. The sudden appearance of another Aizen made the Soul Society highly nervous. After all, Sarange is now weaker than ever, and if there is a battle, no one can guarantee the outcome. Moreover, for all the gods of death, the Aizen in the virtual circle is obviously not as important as the Aizen who defected. Therefore, no one made a move, just watched Aizen and Ulquiorra slowly ascend. Sky, back to the virtual circle. What does he mean by, too late? Jingle Chunshui frowned, recalling the previous scene. I sense those people from the Reiatsu that appeared just now. Niyuli said, the aura of the Quincy Master is really an unpleasant spiritual pressure. Although there is only a trace, this Aizen is lurking in the Sarange, and it must be related to the Quincy Master. Isn't the Quincy extinct? Hitsugaya Toshiro said in a daze. Who knows, there may be survivors. Besides, wasn't there a Quincy in the previous disaster? Several people chatted in low voices, no one made a sound. Yamamoto Yuanyujai said solemnly, the patrol team will search Seo Lingting in the past few days, and any suspicious people will be controlled first. Yes. Komamura Zojun nodded and immediately responded. At the same time, above the Seraiti, at the top of the sky at an unknown distance, after passing through 72 barriers, there is a special space. This is the Lingwang Palace. The Lingwang Palace is roughly composed of the Lingwang Palace block, the Lingwang Palace Amadasanda, the Ling Family Hall, and the Lingwang Danary. From a distance, there are 5 floating islands, and in the center is the inner palace of the Spirit King, which is the main hall of the Spirit King Palace, where the Spirit King lives. At this moment, in the Great Hall of the King of Spirit, in a hall on the 4th floor, 5 members of Team Zero gathered here. Dajisho, Shutara Chinchumaru. Knife God, Tu House Wang Yu. Tangquan Ghost, Tianshalang of Kirin Temple. King of the Valley, Yushu Kiryu. Monk Ai, is a soldier of the main army. The strange thing is that the right arm of the soldier, Yibingwei, who had his arm cut off by Qin Yang's sword, is now intact, as if nothing happened. The situation is very bad. Now the 13th team of the Gote can be said to be completely destroyed. Ermeiwu Wangyu couldn't help shaking her head and said, I didn't expect that the 2 sovereigns in the Mir district were so strong, the evil of the world. Dream is more than 2 masters, only the known masters. There are Sea Dragon, Lich King Zusheng, and Phoenix King, and there is also the mysterious, Dog Angel, the rest are like Shadow Demon, Ibaraki Doji, etc. Not to be underestimated. Carrot. Juan said softly, of course, the most terrifying thing is Emperor Qin. I didn't expect that the 5-pillar ban would be useless to him. If you don't want to come up with countermeasures, everything against Emperor Qin will be in vain. Oh. Actually, the dream is not the most important thing. Although they are strong, this time, I am afraid that they will be merciful. They did not kill any of the captains, but some ordinary gods of death were affected and died before they could be treated. Hibun Kiryu said suspiciously, study carefully about their behavior. They don't seem to want to destroy Seraiti at all, but are collecting Zanpakudo. Pause, he added, let's not talk about this for now. Aizen's defection is the problem. He got the Bengyu, and I am afraid that he will soon break the limit of the god of death, and thus deal with us in turn. HMPH, teaming up with the great fantasy demon, Aizen has also fallen to this point in pursuit of power. Qilin Temple Tianshalang seemed to be quite disdainful, looked at the head of the army, a soldier, and said, should I ask the Spirit King for instructions? The current chaotic situation is no longer a sitting together, just think about it and come up with a countermeasure. It's gone. Aizen defected, the big dream demon. There is another Aizen in the virtual circle. These bizarre things, one after another, always feel that something big is going to happen. Hearing this, Ikibe, the head of the army, was silent. In fact, in his opinion, the most important thing at the moment is to solve the problem of the loss of Zanpakudo by the captains of Serengei as a priority. Countermeasures must be devised as soon as possible to help them regain their strength. Moreover, it must be a short-term recovery method, otherwise it is meaningless. Just thinking about it, a voice sounded in the minds of the 5 people. The future is already messed up. The sound only conveys one meaning. The 5 people changed their expressions, looked at each other, and said in shock, "Lord Spirit King." Impossible. How is it possible for the Spirit King? That's just a wedge. This is the will of Lord Spirit King. As expected, even the Spirit King has been disturbed by the current situation. Spirit King, ruler of the 3 realms. However, the current Spirit King is incomplete. He is only the wedge and foundation of the world, equivalent to the foundation of a tall building. At its peak, the Spirit King in its complete form might be too powerful to be stronger. However, the current Spirit King is almost just a symbol. Spirit King conveys his will, which is very rare and can only be counted on one's fingers. I see. A soldier in the main division of the army nodded respectfully and said, "I will obey the will of King Ling." After speaking, he said to the other 4, "Now, let's find a way to restore the fighting power of Jingling. Wang Yu, you are the god of swords and need your strength. Restore Bankai." Ermeiwu Wang Yu thought for a while and said, "No problem. Although it is dangerous, it is worth trying. However, I am not strong enough by myself, and I need some help from you." "No problem. Then, let's have the next session tomorrow." The next day, in the present world, Empty Seat Town. Just when the team leader assessment was held in the Soul world and the King of Knights was about to become the new captain of the 5th Division, Chinyang placed the 10 Zanpakuto neatly on the ground in the church in Kakuza Town. These 10 Zanpakuto, all of which are captain level, can Bankai, and each one is equivalent to the mysterious power of a magic jade. 4-star Snow Saint upgrades to 5-star, and requires 16 mysterious powers of magic jade, so there is still 6 missing. Chinyang sat upright, with Erlang's legs crossed, looking at the numerous Zanpakuto. Ichigo Kurisaki's Zanyu has not been captured yet, so there are 11 pieces, and there are still 5 pieces left. After thinking about it, Chinyang suddenly smiled. If it's 5 pieces, then ask them to help. In Kakuza Town, there is still a force, that is the Masked Army. In the Masked Army, there are also many captains. Just thinking about it, Chinyang's thoughts moved, and he suddenly felt a breath. Crossing the gate, it seems that the Saifeng Yuan Yi and the others have returned. Chinyang whispered to himself, just in time, it's also time for the King of Heroes to appear. Between words, his demeanor changed, from Emperor Qin to Gilgamesh at once. The next moment, with a wave of his hand, he immediately opened the king's treasure house and collected all the Zanpakuto. Then first, let's make some earth-shattering movements. Chapter-485 I am the King of Heroes. 5th more. I fell asleep, my head hurts. Close black lens bracket. Currently in Qin Yang's hands, there are 10 Zanpakuto that have reached Bankai, and one is a failure, obtained from the 2 Wangyu, which is sheathed. However, when Shui Sheng reached 5 stars, he needed 16, and there were 6 Zanpakuto in between. But in fact, in the hands of Wanchen Lanyan, there are a lot of magic jade, as many as a dozen, and there are 5 spiritual bows. If you want to ascend to stars, in fact, the mysterious power is more than enough. However, Chinyang is not in a hurry, and it is not very good to use 2 or more mysterious powers to mix up stars. The Masked Legion, if I remember correctly, there should be 4 captains. Chinyang recalled for a while, and whispered to himself, Hirako Meiko, Liuch Kensai, Aikawa Rao, Fengchao Lujiro, and Kurosaki Ichigo, there are 5 Zanpakuto, and another one. Take it, and you can get it all together. Quote. The Masked Legion is hiding in an abandoned factory in Kakuza Town. Because there is a former great ghost master who is good at ghosts, there is an enchantment outside the factory to block Reiatsu, and it is not easy to find. Of course, this is not easy. For the god of death, it is a matter of minutes for him to find it. The all-knowing and all-powerful star. Qinyong dodged and came to the sky above Kongza town. He looked down at the entire city and searched between the cities. The noble phantasm, omniscient and omnipotent star calculated the past and saw through the fog of the future. After a while, Qinyong locked the location of the masked army. I found it. Vivi Isho, Qinyong thought, and immediately summoned the going flying boat. I saw above the sky, a flying boat with an emerald green tail flame, was falling from the sky, like a meteor from the sky, about to fall in the corner of the city of Kuza town. The Technology Development Bureau of the Soul Society must be monitoring Kakuza-cho from time to time. When they see such a big movement, they will send them here. There is a king of knights, and as a captain, he has a little influence on Seraiti, and it is easy to make the god of death that he wants to appear. For example, the 2 officers of the 11th team who control Bankai. He. Qinyong grinned, immediately dodged, and quickly headed towards the falling direction of the going flying boat. Meanwhile, at the Urahara store. Seo Lingting let Shifunjin Yoichi and the others, Kurosaki Ichigo and his party of 5, after being detained for 3 days, finally returned to the world from Xuanjimen. The purpose of this invasion of the Soul Society was to rescue Kuchiki Rukia, but the last one was a success. Kuchiki Rukia's life was saved, but Kurosaki Ichigo was completely unhappy. Because of a series of events, he realized that his power was too weak. And Urahara Kazuki couldn't give birth to a shred of joy, and Bengyu finally fell into Aizen's hands. Nothing could be worse than this. Then, Mr. Urahara, I'll go first. After saying hello, Ichigo Kurosaki left the Urahara store. After a few days away from home, he must go home as soon as possible to report safety. Chadu Taihu, Inoue Orihime, and Ishida Yulong also left separately. Watching the few people walk away, Urahara Kazuki stood at the door with a solemn expression on his face. Mr. Yaiki, you just said, another Aizen. Yes. Saifeng Yuanyi nodded a little. That's another Aizen that is much stronger than the Aizen we know, controlling the virtual circle EH. Suddenly, the expressions of the 2 changed slightly. They looked at each other, and looked at the sky suddenly. I saw that above the sky, in the noon sun, there was something holding an emerald green tail flame, which was rapidly falling. The direction in which it fell was exactly Kuzako Park. Meteor. Urahara Kazuki narrowed his eyes. No, it should be, Saifeng Yuan murmured Yi. It's like a spaceship. The 2 glanced at each other, and then quickly rushed in that direction. Not only them, but in a corner of Kakuza town, in an abandoned factory. A cute girl dressed like an alien is lying on the dilapidated window, looking at the strange scene in the sky. Little Riri, look, green shooting star. Huh, so, can you stop being called Xiao Riri? I hate that name. Another tugging little girl sat carelessly on the broken sofa with a look of disgust on her face. It's really inhumane, Hiyori. On the 2nd floor of the factory, a man with a golden sister's head laughed. However, his smile soon solidified. Ah, bald man, what did you say? Tsuruuki Hiyori got up from the sand, took off his slippers, and threw them towards the man on the 2nd floor. With a snap, the man was caught in the middle of his face by the shoe, and immediately stumbled, so that he did not fall directly. Dangerous. Are you trying to kill me? You violent idiot. The corner of the man's mouth twitched, barely holding his body. At this moment, a man with short white hair who was boxing walked out from behind him. He said seriously, Pingzi, do you feel it? Hearing this, Hiriko Mako put away her smile and looked out of the factory window. Well, something fell. You don't have to worry about it for now, I'll take a look. With that said, he walked to the wooden frame, picked up a peaked cap, put on a trench coat, dodged, and left quickly. The other side. Kurosaki Ichigo bid farewell to the rest of his companions and walked home. He was a little absent-minded. In fact, when he acted in the Soul realm, a strange mask was following him, and, vaguely, he heard some kind of sound. Devouring you, devouring you, devouring you. It seems that there is another evil self that is constantly attacking him. What the hell is that? Kurosaki Ichigo looked a little worried. Unconsciously, he walked to an alley. From here, a few streets in the past, is his home. However, at this time, at the other end of the alley, there were heavy footsteps, which seemed to be wearing heavy armor, and they kept making the sound of metal collisions while walking. Huh. Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly reacted, and as soon as he looked up, he saw a flying sword coming towards him. What? He was startled, hurriedly rolled around, avoided to one side, and shouted angrily, "What do you want to do?" He just saw 0.8 Ching, the person walking across the alley, wearing going armor, short blonde hair, arrogant and cold face, not human. Bitch, in the way. Gilgamesh walked straight without stopping. Kurosaki Ichigo was so annoyed that he killed him with a single sword just because he was in the way. Moreover, the road of the alley is not small, there is no way to get in the way. You bastard. He was already anxious, and now he was provoked, and his anger was running high. I was still trembling and looking like I was about to die just now. When I was provoked by someone's words, I immediately became furious. Ichigo Kurosaki, you are really a child. You know me. Kurosaki Ichigo widened his eyes. Who are you? He blurted out. Hearing this, Gilgamesh looked cold and spoke loudly. I am the king of the oldest narrative poem in the world. I am a demigod. I am Gilgamesh, the king of heroes. Chapter 0496 _ Collect all the treasures in the world. Open black lens bracket 6th more. The chapter's ode have been completed. Although it passed 12 o'clock, it was barely completed. Sleep, sleep, I'm exhausted close black lens bracket. Gilgamesh. Kurosaki Ichigo was a little dumbfounded. The person in front of him was indeed a Westerner. It's not surprising to have such a name, but what is the king of heroes and narrative poetry? What the hell is going on? Kurosaki Ichigo remembered the king of knights, the guy who easily suppressed their group when they invaded Saraiti. The hero king in front of him seemed to have similarities with the Night King. Huh. Suddenly, Ichigo Kurosaki looked up, and from the sky above the alley, he could see an emerald green meteor, which quickly passed over the sky above Kuzucho. What is that? He was startled. The bastard, talking to this king, was distracted. Gilgamesh snapped his fingers, and suddenly, behind him, more than a dozen golden ripples appeared. Guns, spears, halberds, swords, knives, sticks. In an instant, more than a dozen phantoms of various weapons were projected. Seeing this, Kurosaki Ichigo's face darkened, and 15 immediately ducked back. Get out of the way. Something has fallen from the sky, I have to stop it, or this city. Too arrogant, human. Gilgamesh flicked his fingers, and suddenly dozens of weapons flew out. Damn. Kurosaki Ichigo was so annoyed that he immediately took out a wooden sign and pressed it against his chest. A thud, his soul left his body and appeared in the image of the god of death. The power of death. Gilgamesh raised his eyebrows. It's useless. With your meager power, even wielding a huge blade, you can't do anything. Really? Kurosaki Ichigo took a deep breath, pointed his sword forward, and placed his left palm on his right wrist. So, how about Bankai? With a loud roar, a surge of spiritual pressure burst out in an instant. Boom boom boom. Like a tornado, the power of Reiatsu swirled around Kurosaki Ichigo. This huge spiritual pressure was divided into two. Part of it was transformed into an inner infrared Black Death Tyrant, and the other part was condensed into a slender Zanpakuto with a super high Reiki density. Unlike ordinary Bankai, which will be huge, Kurosaki Ichigo's Bankai is light and thin. Bankai Tien Suo Zanyu. Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes flashed and he said, I'm sorry, I have to stop things falling from the sky, I don't have time to play with you. As soon as the voice fell, his figure disappeared in an instant, and when he reappeared, it had already crossed Gilgamesh's side. The refined Bankai has improved the ultra-high movement speed and ultra-high-speed slashing. Gilgamesh's eyes turned, and he whispered, "The lock of the sky." Kurosaki Ichigo, who was fleeing, suddenly changed his face slightly. He found that several golden spatial ripples appeared on all sides of his head, and in the ripples, a chain of chains suddenly rushed out, hitting him directly. The ghosts don't go away. Thin. Kurosaki Ichigo secretly cursed, trying to avoid the chains. However, these chains seemed to be able to track the target, constantly fighting and blocking, making it impossible for him to leave easily. "Looks like you're not going to let me go easily." Kurosaki Ichigo waved his blade again and again, the sword light flickered, and the lock of the sky was instantly broken. Of the sky split open by his sword will soon wrap up again. The speed is so-so, but the destructive power is not comparable to the general gigantic Bankai. Gilgamesh manipulated the chains with his mind, and at the same time observed and analyzed Kurosaki Ichigo's power with full leeway. Under the siege of countless chains, Kurosaki Ichigo was completely unable to escape and was exhausted. "Damn!" Kurosaki Ichigo scolded loudly. He had a very short time to cultivate Bankai, and he did not cultivate any special skills at all. Therefore, in the face of this situation, when the speed could not escape, he was a little helpless. However, at this moment, deep in his heart, an evil voice suddenly came. "Trash, I'll come." "What? This kind of thing, if it is me, I can solve it in an instant." "Ichigo, you are really a waste." That voice was evil, tyrannical, and cruel, and suddenly invaded Kurosaki Ichigo's consciousness. I saw a layer of black matter in his eyes, slowly being dyed. "Ah!" Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly screamed, and after a while, the voice stopped abruptly. He hunched his back and stood there, motionless. At this time, a piece of white material slowly condensed a ghost-like mask on its face. "Oh, this is the beginning." Gilgamesh raised his eyebrows and said, "I can't help but fight, just suppress it, and it will become blurred." However, I can't say that, I can only say that the emptiness in his body is too much. Stronger. Between words, Kurosaki Ichigo's blurring has been completed. The mask on his face almost covered half of his face. The next moment, strange laughter came out. "Ha ha 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 Ichigo, keep your eyes wide open for a good look. Such a powerful Zanpakudo, in your hands, looks like a wooden stick, you'll be laughing to death." The blurred Kurosaki Ichigo exudes madness. While speaking, he jumped up, avoided the interception of the chains, and flew over Gilgamesh's head. The blade is raised high, and the black spiritual pressure is wrapped around the Tiansuo Zanyu. "King of Heroes, thank you so much. It's not you. I can't easily take control of my body, so go to hell, ha ha ha." After laughing wildly, he slashed with a sword. The crescent moon rushes into the sky. Boom! The black crescent-shaped slash, covering a huge spiritual pressure, fell from the sky, as if to split the earth with a sword. "Hey ignorant and fearless!" Gilgamesh sneered and Vivi raised his hand. The next moment, the black crescent moon bombarded his palm. Boom! The powerful slash, after touching Going's armor, was directly weakened by 70–80%, and not even a trace of trauma was left. Clap! Gilgamesh squeezed hard and directly crushed the crescent moon to 260 sheng. Impossible! The blurred Kurosaki Ichigo widened his eyes, his expression sluggish. However, the next moment, his pupils shrank, only to see Gilgamesh dodging, approaching him, and then a Going grabbed him with a big hand, grabbed his neck directly, and forced him into the ground. Boom! The streets of the alley shook, and the ground cracked. Kurosaki Ichigo let out a wow, vomited blood, and the mask shattered a few corners. "If you have a little strength, you will get carried away. Your level is still 108,000 miles away. You can't even control the emptiness in your body, and you can't protect anything." Gilgamesh reached out and grabbed it, snatching the heavenly lock and Zanyu. "Your knife is very good. This king is interested in collecting all the treasures in the world. This belongs to me. For this, spare your life. After speaking, Gilgamesh punched Kurosaki Ichigo in the face, directly shattering his mask and knocking him unconscious. Suddenly, the world was quiet. After doing this, Gilgamesh got up, turned his finger Vivi, swung the blade, and finally grabbed the handle and threw the knife. Really good Zanpakuto. Between the words, the building complex on one side of the alley was instantly divided. Boom boom boom, a row of houses seems to be cut by an invisible blade, and the incision is extremely neat. It's done. Next, it's the masked army. With a thought, Tiansuo Zanyu was collected into the treasure of the king, and then Gilgamesh went in the direction of the going flying boat. Chapter 0497_Deathwing. In the sky above Kakuza town, an emerald green shadow, dragging a long tail flame, fell into the city park. Boom! The huge impact moved half of the small park to the ground, and the residents who were resting and exercising in the park fled one after another, but there were also many daring people who approached the going flying boat after the impact. What is this? A spaceship? I didn't see the engine unit. How can there be such a thing in the world? Is it a fighter plane that the military secretly researched? It won't be alien technology, will it? UFO or something? The people were full of curiosity and approached on foot. Going flying boat is very streamlined and beautiful. Such a huge impact destroyed half of the park, and its flying boat body was also intact. Many people thought it was a high-tech product, took out their mobile phones, and called the police. At the same time, the two figures quickly approached and came to the point of fall. Urahara, Saifeng Yuan murmured in surprise, what is this? It doesn't look like a weapon developed by humans. Well, it's not a purely mechanical structure. Moreover, it has suffered such a big impact without being damaged, which means that it is not man-made. It is not a human-made spaceship. This alone is enough to make Urahara Kazuki pay attention. He squinted his eyes and said to himself, it's not something from the Soul Realm. Anything made by the Technology Development Bureau will have special traces. This flying boat has no obvious spiritual pressure. How to do it? Saifeng Yuan asked Yi inquiringly. This thing fell from the sky. The origin is mysterious, and it caused a huge stir. The government will react. We must control it before that. Urahara Kazuki pressed the brim of his hat and immediately walked towards Feijo. Mr. Yaiki, please erase the memories of these humans. No problem. To erase memory, this is not the ability of the god of death, but a special tool and drug developed by the Technology Development Bureau, like an insecticide, just spray it on humans. Of course Kazuki Urahara would make something like this. The two moved quickly and easily controlled the scene. All the nearby humans had their short-term memories erased, while Going Feishu was taken away by Kazuki Urahara and moved back to the Urahara store. While they were in action, at the top of an iron tower in the park, a young man with a blonde sister's head was watching all this with a cold eye. What's the matter? The young man looked up at the sky, and that direction was exactly where the going flying boat came from. This time, it's getting more and more strange. This thing that is obviously a spaceship, is it the equipment of aliens? Just as he was thinking, in his perception, an aura similar to his suddenly appeared. Boom! A surge of spiritual pressure that was not simply a god of death appeared suddenly and was extremely intense. This is Kurosaki Ichigo. The blonde man was startled. What happened? It turned out to be a blur. As soon as he gritted his teeth, he immediately gave up exploring the going flying boat, and instead ran in the direction from which the Reiatsu came. His speed was very fast, but this Reiatsu disappeared faster. So much so that 10 minutes had passed by the time he found the place. Coming to this alley, the blonde sister immediately saw Kurosaki Ichigo lying on the ground. A battle with someone. He looked around, and from the traces of the battle, he got a rough idea of what happened. Obviously he was suppressed, then easily defeated, and finally took a punch, shattered the mask, and fell into a coma. Quote. Kurosaki Ichigo's strength is said to be strong, weak or weak, and the person who can knock him down in such a short time is probably extraordinary. Moreover, the man could not feel any obvious remnants of spiritual pressure, and it seemed that it was not a god of death, or a vain act. Who is it? With a click, the blonde sister headed towards Kurosaki Ichigo, grabbed him, and quickly left the place. Miscalculated. When Gilgamesh came to the park, all he saw was a big pit and comatose humans lying everywhere. I didn't expect the masked army to move so slowly, but Kazuki Urahara moved faster. He shook his head helplessly. I wanted to find an excuse. When they took the flying boat, I went to the door to get it back, and by the way, I grabbed their Zanpakuto. The excuse didn't make it work, but it doesn't matter, it's not a big problem. However, there is no excuse, the identity of Gilgamesh cannot be used to snatch Zanpakuto, and it has to be replaced. At first, I wanted to use this identity to show my sense of existence, and I could go to the Soul Realm later. Just have to replace it now. Well, I figured it out. After pondering for a while, Gilgamesh immediately smiled. They must think that this spacecraft is a product of outer space, and that is what they want. Gilgamesh snapped his fingers, and a black shadow suddenly appeared, turning into a shadow demon. As soon as it appeared, the shadow demon disappeared immediately, and when it reconvened, it had already appeared in the Zai Palace. He got 5 magic jades from Aizen, and after getting the things, he returned directly to the world. This is not a space jump. Space jump cannot pass through the 2 realms, but allows itself to dissipate and reconverge at the place where another phantom body is located. Although the effect is similar, the principle is different. Very good, 5 magic jade, you can start a new transformation. Gilgamesh nodded in satisfaction. However, it is currently in the mandatory transformation period, and it will take some time. It is worth mentioning that, as the phantom body reaches 6 stars, the mandatory transformation period will also be shortened, which has been reduced from the initial 1 week to 4 days. In other words, tonight, you can start a new transformation. Time flies, and it is early morning. When the forced transformation period ended, Gilgamesh immediately absorbed 5 phantom jades. The reason why I didn't use magic jade to increase Shui Sheng's star rating was because the mysterious power of Zanpakuto was slightly different from that of magic jade. Mixing them might not be appropriate. At this moment, on the outskirts of Kakuza town, Gilgamesh has absorbed a mysterious power. The huge energy quickly overflowed his body and changed his life form. He changed from human form to dragon form. It is not a dragon like the sea dragon, but the image of Arlong in the west. And the body swelled rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it was as huge as a mountain. The dragon has 3 claws, and its wings are like magma. After unfolding, it covers the sky and the sun. As if trapped for 100,000 years, the giant dragon opened its mouth and let out a loud dragon roar. Roar. This roar, just the sound pressure, set off a huge wave in the river. The huge wave rose, and even drowned the bridge. In an instant, the entire early morning city was awakened. Countless lights began to light up, and countless people opened their eyes from their sleep. At the same time, in Qin Yang's mind, the message of the new transformation came out. The 20th Change Deathwing. Chapter 0498 _ I am the Cataclysm. 20th Change Deathwing, Neltharion. Star Rating. Ability 1, Demon Soul. Ability 2, Fission of the Earth. Ability 3. Ability 4. Ability 5. It turned out to be the Black Dragon, Deathwing. When Qin Yang heard the news of the new transformation, he couldn't help being stunned. The new transformation opened by just 5 phantom jades exceeded his expectations again. 4 days ago, he had this feeling when he absorbed King Destroyer in the Soul Realm and opened King Ho. As the main body reaches the 6-star level, these new phantom bodies have become 1 level stronger. What is Feng Wang? A first-class beast. The current Liguang Master Lei Gong is only a 2nd-level divine beast, and he was resurrected by Feng Wang. In terms of strength, the full-star Feng Wang should be 1 level higher than Lei Gong. The same is true of the current Deathwing. If nothing else, the full star Deathwing must be far stronger than the Lich King, and it is not the same. These two transformations will surpass the current Dominion level combat power and reach a higher level. Thinking of this, Qin couldn't help but have an idea. It seems to be above the Master, and a new level has been set to distinguish it. At present, Aizen is far more powerful than the Master level, and after the fusion of 093, it has reached a new dimension. Deathwing, I am afraid, will also surpass the concept of domination. Of course, this is not urgent, let's put it aside. The newly transformed Deathwing is a 2-star, with 2 abilities. The first ability, Demon Soul, or called Giant Dragon Soul. This is an artifact. It is an artifact created by Deathwing's fusion of the power of the devil and the power of the guardian dragon. It has the power of a god. Without the Demon Soul, Deathwing is just the Black Dragon King, just the Dragon King, but with the Demon Soul, its combat power can soar by a level. Simply put, without Demon Soul, Deathwing is much stronger than the Lich King, but with Demon Soul, Deathwing is 1 level stronger than the Lich King. And the second ability after that, the Fission of the Earth. This is not so much ability as it is authority. Before his fall, Deathwing was called Neltharion. He was the king of black dragons, one of the 5 guardian dragons, and the strongest among them. The guardian of the earth, Neltharion, whose duty is to control the earth. Understanding the ability of the new transformation, Qin slowly opened his eyes and couldn't help but marvel. Devil's Soul is only skill 1, what is skill 5? Cataclysm. Even the giant dragon's soul is not skill 5, the only thing that can be imagined is the catastrophic cataclysm, Bing. This is an absolute power that is enough to destroy the continent. It's really terrifying. If Deathwing reaches 5 stars, I'm afraid it can destroy the world of death. Qin couldn't help shaking his head. Recovering from his immersion, he immediately began to take control of his new body. The giant dragon's body was very heavy. He tried to flap his wings, but only lightly incited it, and the river on the side immediately set off a huge wave. He tried to lift his paw, and after he patted it, the ground cracked instantly. There seems to be the power of lava in the body, as if it is about to explode. If it weren't for the black armor with pits and holes on the surface of the body, Qin even suspected that the 2-star Deathwing would not be able to withstand its own powerful strength, and exploded. I have to raise the star rating as soon as possible. Now it's a weak body, and it contains too much power. It's too difficult to control. Qin only felt that the power in his body was too full, and it would tear his body apart at any time. Immediately, he let out a loud roar. The sound of the dragon's roar resounded throughout the entire Kongza town, and the black dragon's roar alarmed all creatures. Among the cats, dogs, chickens, ducks, fish and sheep, all intelligent creatures in the city, more than half of them died immediately when they heard this roar, and the rest fell to the ground and shivered. This is not what Qin did deliberately, but the natural coercion of the higher dragon race on the rest of the creatures. Similar to the dragon power of the sea dragon. After the roar, the ground beneath Deathwing's feet shook violently, as if it were about to be torn apart, and the entire river was divided. The volcano in the distance suddenly erupted, and endless lava began to rush over the earth. There has been a big riot in human society, and the huge body of Deathwing can be seen clearly even in the dark night. Countless people woke up, fled, madly away from this suburb. In the midst of this earth-shattering change, several figures continued to approach. Their movement speed is extremely fast, and in just a short while, they have come to the front of Deathwing. Dragon. Tsuruuki Hiyori opened his mouth blankly. Black dragon. Hirako. It turned out to be a dragon. Idiot, I can see. The blonde sister-headed man, or Hirako Mako, squinted his eyes and stared at Qin. Where did it come from? Liuch Quanxi frowned and said, it looks very strong. If you leave it alone, I'm afraid the entire city will be destroyed. A strange spaceship appeared during the day, and a dragon appeared at night. I'm afraid there is a connection between this. An explosive head said solemnly. His name was Akawa Luowu. He. Qin Yang's dragon eyes turned and locked on the 8 people from the masked army who appeared, reptiles. Can you still talk? Fengqiao Luzhiro was shocked, has a high level of wisdom. Hearing this, Hiriko Mako looked grim and said with a cautious attitude, Hailong, who are you? Where are you from? Qin Yang fanned his wings and set off a hurricane, and his body slowly took off from the ground. Huge body, flying high in the sky. His wings, burning flames, every time he fanned, they set off a raging fire, as if to burn the sky. His skin, the dragon scales seem to have magma flowing, and his mouth seems to be the heart of a furnace. My name Deathwing. The deep voice spread out and spread throughout the city. At this moment, everyone within a radius of more than 10 kilometers could hear it clearly. It seems to be the sound of disaster, the master of destruction. I am the destroyer of the destiny, the end of all things, unstoppable. There is no disobedience. I am big. Disaster. Change. Boom. In an instant, the whole city, its streets, its houses, everything was shaking, and the whole earth was shaking violently. It seems that there is a powerful and incomparable force that is tearing this area apart. It was as if there was an invisible big hand reaching out from under the ground, tearing the entire city to shreds. I am the master of destruction. Tiny reptiles, who allowed you to fly before my eyes? Deathwing opened the dragon's mouth, a breath, and suddenly sprayed out. It was magma, like a volcanic eruption, and this magma flew towards Hiriko Mako and others brazenly. Seeing this, the 8 masked people were all stunned. Deathwing. Chapter 0499_Shadow of the Dragon. I've been like this lately, lie down for a while, and fall asleep before I know it. Deathwing took a long breath and spat out a piece of lava. This is not a skill, just like a human spit, saliva. However, for the masked people, this has to be seriously dealt with. The 8 people scattered to both sides, avoiding this random blow. The ultra-high temperature lava passed through the masked crowd, and then fell towards the city like a meteor shower. Whoosh whoosh. A mass of lava splashed, turned into dozens of meteors, and hit the ground. Boom. Fortunately, this is a suburb. If it is in the center of the city, I am afraid that it will destroy an area. Damn. Chuan Luowu was dripping with cold sweat and said, I've heard that a dragon can spew flames, but it's the first time I've seen it spit lava. What should I do, Hiriko? Fengqiao Luzhiro's face was calm, and his right hand was already quietly holding the zanpakuto. The girl in the sailor suit, Lisa Yaminomaru, said seriously, what a handsome dragon, this is the first time I see a real dragon. Idiot, it's the first time I've seen anyone. Liuch Kunchi was speechless. Seeing the lava gathering in Deathwing's mouth, he immediately grabbed Liza Yaminomaru's shoulder and quickly retreated with her. Shine. The 8 people were divided into 4 groups, like a frightened school of fish, spread out a long distance at once. Only Hiriko Mako stayed in place, stared at Deathwing, and slowly drew out the blade. Giant dragon, you look very strong. If possible, we don't want to fight against you. Can you answer me a question? Why did you appear? Where did you come from? What is the purpose? Hiriko Mako smiled strangely. Is this a question? Tsuruuki Hiyori rolled his eyes and complained silently in his heart. He. Deathwing let out a low laugh and stared with a huge dragon eye. Small mortal, humble reptile. My wings will bring destruction, and everything will be reduced to ashes. Roar. Long Yin shook the sky, and the sound pressure it emitted shook the sky. The expressions of the masked 8 people were ugly, and several people couldn't help covering their ears. Under this roar, it seemed that a hurricane was born, the ground below cracked open, and magma spurted out. What a terrifying dragon, it can shake people to death when it roars. Yu Jiaoshan Boxwan whispered. Junzi, stop him, or the whole city will turn into hell. I know, there's really no way. Hiriko Mako looked unhappy. I have heard of the arrogance of the dragon clan, but it was only when I really faced it that I realized that it was an arrogant race. They don't like humans, they hate death more, but they don't watch the city go down either. 7. At this moment, Deathwing stopped the dragon's roar. He fanned his wings, set off the burning flames and then swooped down. Those huge wings, under the incitement, turned the sky into a sea of fire wherever they passed. Thin. Can such a large body be so fast? What the hell? Liu Quanxi's face was dignified, and he pulled out his Zanpakuto at once. Let's be ashes. Break the earth wind. The light of the sword flashed green, and the light wind swirled around Liu Quanxi's body. Facing the galloping Deathwing, he retreated decisively and slashed out at the same time. Under a sword, the wind turned into a twinkling thread, aiming at Deathwing's eyes. At the same time, the girl in the sailor suit raised her left hand, covered her face and said, "Quanxi, can I take a few pictures first?" Between the words, within her body, the power of emptiness began to rise, turning into a mask. The next moment, her spiritual pressure skyrocketed by a stage. Break him out, Iron Lacewing. Immediately after the liberation speech, Sally Yaminomaru's Zanpakuto turned into a long chang. The tip of the spear resembled the shape of an oar. In the face of Deathwing's charge, the two held hands together. However, whether it is a slash like the wind or a long chang like a halberd, under the wings of Deathwing, it is like a man's arm as a chariot. Tremble in the shadow of my wings, mortal. Whoosh. The black shadow that flew past, its high-speed march, the wind and waves that set off naturally formed a circle of protection. Kunashi Liuch and Sally Yatomaru couldn't get close at all. The moment Deathwing approached, the gust of wind whipped up by the opponent's wings directly blew them hundreds of kilometers away. Damn, what a strong wind pressure! Sally Yamanmaru gasped. When it was blown away, the manic wind pressure directly shattered her mask, and with a bang, her mask like a knight's helmet shattered instantly. All of this, for Deathwing, was just a speck of dust. His speed is extremely fast, swooping from high altitude, passing low altitude, and turning around again, hovering over the city. In just a short moment, the sky turned into a sea of fire, and wherever it passed, the hurricane set off, all the buildings collapsed. As he himself said, under the shadow of the wings, all will be destroyed. Small bull. Seeing this, Hiroko Mako immediately shouted. Yes. The big fat man Zhaoshan Boxuan nodded, staring solemnly at Deathwing. He slammed his hands together and chanted at a high speed. The army is 8 inches, and there is no reason to retreat. The blue bar, the white bar, the black bar, and the red bar. After engaging with each other, they disappeared into the sea, the gate of the dragon's tail, the gate of the tiger's bite, the city of the turtle armor. The gate, the city gate of Fengyi. The 4 beasts plug the gate. Boom. Suddenly, Deathwing's whole body formed walls, a huge square barrier, trapping him in it all at once. Is this kind of thing trying to trap me? A low voice came from within the enchantment. Ignorant mortals, you are smaller than the dust, sweeping out the dust is just a breath of dragon. Roar. The sound of roar sounded, and the enchantment shook violently. Deathwing first contained the wings, and finally suddenly opened, charging towards the heights. Boom. The entire barrier was torn apart in an instant, like a glass plate, shattering into crystal powder. Yu Zhaoshan Boxuan's complexion turned pale, his expression horrified. Junzi, run, this giant dragon is not something we can deal with. He trapped the opponent with his strongest enchantment, but it was only for a second. Hiroko Mako's expression was also sluggish, and no one could have imagined that the 4 beasts plug the door were like tofu slag, easily broken. At this moment, Deathwing flew above the crowd. He suddenly stopped, opened the giant dragon's mouth, and while roaring up to the sky, he shot out a dragon's breath. Unlike the previous magma, this time, it was the breath of a real giant dragon. Boom. It seems that a sea of fire is coming to suppress everyone, and it is like a volcanic eruption, and a huge ball of lava falls outrageously. It was like an asteroid falling out of the sky, and it was like a sun in the dark night. At this moment, half of the night sky is illuminated. Oops, we seem to have provoked a horrible thing. Below the huge lava ball, Hiroko Mako looked up and stared blankly. Chapter 0500-Fission of the Earth. Let's go. You run first. Seeing the horror of Deathwing, Hiroko Mako immediately gave up her mind of nosy. Destruction of the city is related to their masked army. Naturally, the god of death will deal with it. No matter how bad it is, there is another mysterious force in Kakuzucho. Hearing this, the other 7 immediately began to retreat. Hiroko Mako stayed where he was, and pointed at Deathwing with his sword, while brushing his left hand over his cheek. Sure enough, I shouldn't be here. While complaining to himself, his spiritual pressure was rising rapidly, reaching the captain level in a blink of an eye, and it was still improving at a very high speed. The next moment, a virtual mask was suddenly put on its face. Hey, dragon, you want to destroy the city, it has nothing to do with us, let's go now, you play your own, how about it? He opened his mouth as if asking, but the huge magma ball was already flying towards him. This giant dragon breathed and condensed a ball of magma, burning with high-temperature flames, and its volume was comparable to a building. As the communication invalid, Hiroko Mako narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "That's really impossible." False flash. The blood-red spiritual pressure gathered at the tip of its sword, and then suddenly sprayed, like a phantom flash, facing the magma ball. Boom! The two collided in the air, and a huge explosion occurred in an instant. The magma ball exploded, and after being shattered, it turned into a bolide that filled the sky and fell in all directions. This is like fireworks. In the night sky, it is extremely gorgeous. Hee hee hee. Deathwing flew high in the sky and burst into low smiles. A fly is buzzing in your ear, will you let him go? A mere reptile, too arrogant. Between the words, he swooped down again. Seeing this, Hiroko Mako's expression changed slightly. If he could, he would want to run now, but he had to cover the others, at least for a while. Thinking of this, he immediately chose to liberate the Zanpakuto. Fall down, stroking. After the brief liberation speech, the Zanpakuto quickly changed shape, and a circle appeared at the end of the handle. Hiroko Mako put his finger into the circle and quickly turned the blade. At the same time, a unique scent emerges that quickly spreads throughout its Reiatsu coverage. Deathwing dived at a high speed, but suddenly penetrated Hiroko Mako's body, and he plunged into the ground. Boom! The whole earth was shaken, and the river running through the city caused huge waves. The river water evaporated, and the vegetation withered. Upside down. Deathwing looked up and looked at Hiroko Mako, but saw the other party standing upside down in the air. No, it was him who was upside down. Everything he saw was upside down. It's not upside down. Mako Hiroko spun the blade and grinned. It's upside down, left and right, front and back, everything you see is upside down. Dragon Deathwing, you are indeed very powerful. It's just to play with us, but your arrogance will kill you sooner or later. After he finished speaking, he didn't mean to make a move. Hiroko Mako didn't think desperately, as long as the delay was enough, and even if the Zanpakuto slashed the giant dragon, it would be difficult to cause damage. Taste. Deathwing dismissed it. It's just a visual distraction. This ability is only suitable for performing magic. Between the words, he raised his paws and suddenly slapped the ground. I am the embodiment of power. The fission of the earth. Boom. He slapped it with a claw, and the ground beneath his feet collapsed in an instant. As a dragon of the earth, he was born with the power to control the earth, and at this moment, the entire Kongza town was collapsing. Columns of magma sprayed out from the ground, and the entire city, under this claw, shattered into pieces, turning into a dozen broken areas. Between each area, there are bottomless ravines. Underneath it, the underground magma is useful. In just a short while, the entire city has turned into hell. What? Hiroko Mako's pupils shrank, and he quickly dodged, avoiding this indiscriminate attack. The magma ejected from the ground, like a fountain, rushed into the air violently, and exploded like fireworks. Just one claw has this kind of destructive power. He was astonished in his heart. This dragon was just playing with us before. Dragon's breath, that's just spit. At this moment, it is the display of the power of Deathwing. Urahara Store, underground space. Affected by the fission of the earth, the space here, Yeezy shook, collapsed, all kinds of rocks were constantly broken, and even magma poured out from the ground. In the center, the flying boat of Going was parked quietly, and Kazuki Urahara analyzed and studied it seriously. Kazuki, Siphon Yuan Yei shouted at the entrance. Hide away, leave it alone. This city is about to perish. Wait a minute, and I'll be able to dissect its makeup soon. Urahara Kazuki was beaming, as if he had discovered a new continent, and continued to analyze the structure of the Going flying boat. Seeing this, Siphon Yuan looked solemn at night. The situation outside is already known to this side, and the aftermath has spread to this place. Sooner or later, it will be turned into ruins. If you don't leave, it will be too dangerous. And at this moment, the sound of footsteps came. Siphon Yuan Yi Vivi was startled, and quickly looked sideways. I saw at the entrance, a man with blonde hair and an arrogant face dressed in Going armor, who did not know when he had arrived. Seeing this dress, for some reason, Siphon Yuan immediately thought of Going Feijo. The styles of the two are so similar and equally gorgeous. She opened her mouth, you are the master of this spaceship. Gilgamesh ignored her existence, jumped lightly, and jumped into this underground space from a height. Based on your level, do you still want to study my Going boat? Hearing this, Kazuki Urahara paused, and Vivi turned around and pressed the brim of his hat and said, you are its owner. Why did it fall? I checked it out. 3.2 This ship is in good condition and seems to be powered by solar energy. You're good to see that it's all right. Gilgamesh applauded. As for why he fell, of course he was knocked down. What? One day ago, I fought the enemy in outer space and the spacecraft was shot down. It's that simple. Gilgamesh pointed lightly, and suddenly, the Going flying boat made a slight vibration and slowly flew up. Battle in outer space. Siphon Yuan Yi was stunned. Who are you? Who is fighting with you? They can't go into outer space. The lack of air and spirits is enough to kill them. Enemy. Gilgamesh grinned. Isho, isn't this going crazy outside? It's one of the great fantasy demons, the Destruction Lord Deathwing.